The year is 1706 in the quiet streets of colonial Boston, Massachusetts. It is here, in this modest city, that Benjamin Franklin was born into a family of 17 children. The world he entered was one of vast change, where the fledgling American colonies were still under British rule, and the Age of Enlightenment was quietly beginning to stir the minds of thinkers around the globe. Benjamin Franklin, a man of great intellect and curiosity, would go on to play a key role in the shaping of the United States, both in its struggle for independence and in its philosophical and scientific foundations. His life spanned remarkable moments in history: the birth of a nation, the rise of Enlightenment ideals, and the transformation of science and diplomacy. In this journey, we will explore Franklin's beginnings in Boston, his rise as a printer and writer, his groundbreaking scientific discoveries, and his instrumental role in the founding of a new nation. Through Franklin's eyes, we will move slowly through the years, witnessing how one man's thoughts and actions became interwoven with the very fabric of American history. Now, as we drift through his life, let us settle into the steady rhythm of history, where the quiet moments of reflection hold as much weight as the great deeds he achieved. Before we begin, remember to like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from, as we gently begin this journey through the life of Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was born on January 17, 1706, in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, in the heart of the New England colonies. The Franklin family was large, with Benjamin being the 15th of 17 children. His father, Josiah Franklin, was a tallow chandler and soap maker, a hard-working and devout man who sought to provide for his growing family despite the modest means. His mother, Abiah Folger, came from a respected family, and together they raised their children in a household marked by both discipline and the promise of opportunity. The world Franklin entered was one of limited material wealth, yet it was rich in ideas and intellectual ferment. Boston, in the early 18th century, was a place of vigorous debate, an emerging city that, though still under British rule, was home to thinkers, writers, and religious leaders who were beginning to question the old ways. The environment Franklin was immersed in was one of puritanical values and a strong sense of civic responsibility, but it also held the first whispers of a new world, a world that would one day become the United States. As a boy, Franklin was a curious child, ever interested in the workings of the world around him. His education was a mix of formal schooling and self-teaching. At age 8, he was sent to Boston's Boston Grammar School, but his formal education was brief. His father, who had aspirations of seeing his son enter the clergy, could not afford the tuition for a more extensive schooling. Instead, Benjamin spent much of his time at home, reading books in the family library, a library that would become the foundation of his intellectual life. One of the most significant aspects of Franklin's childhood was the influence of books. Despite the modest nature of his family's home, Benjamin was exposed to literature at an early age, and he took advantage of the texts available to him. Books on a wide range of subjects, philosophy, history, science, and theology, captivated his imagination. In particular, the works of classical writers such as Plutarch had a profound impact on his developing sense of self. Franklin would later speak of his admiration for Plutarch's Lives, the stories of great men who had shaped history, whose virtues and flaws Franklin would seek to emulate throughout his own life. Although Franklin's formal schooling was cut short, his intellectual development did not stagnate. His father, recognizing his son's keen intellect, did what he could to provide him with books, encouraging Franklin's self-study. It was through this combination of formal education and personal determination that Franklin began to cultivate the disciplined mind that would later serve him throughout his life. However, Franklin's early years were not without hardship. As a young boy, he had to take on a number of responsibilities to help support the family. His father's business, though steady, was not lucrative, and at the age of 10, Benjamin was put to work in a variety of roles. By the age of 12, Franklin was apprenticed to his older brother James, a printer who ran his own newspaper, the New England Courant. This decision would prove to be one of the most pivotal moments in Franklin's life, for it marked the beginning of his journey into the world of printing, writing, and public discourse. The relationship between Franklin and his older brother was both formative and fraught with tension. James was a stern master, and their relationship was often strained. Yet it was under James's tutelage that Franklin learned the craft of printing, a skill that would provide the foundation for much of his future success. Through his work in the print shop, Franklin became familiar with the mechanics of the printing press, the business of publishing, and the world of written ideas. In many ways, this apprenticeship was Franklin's first education in the practical world, where the written word became a powerful tool for shaping public opinion and discourse. During this time, Franklin also began to write for the New England Courant, contributing anonymously to the paper. His writing was sharp, clever, and insightful, a reflection of the burgeoning intellectual currents of the time. It was here that Franklin first began to develop his voice as a writer, using wit and humour to engage his readers. His pieces were often critical of both local politics and religious dogma, showcasing his early independence of thought. Despite the tensions with his brother, Franklin's time at the print shop was an invaluable education. He learned not only the technical aspects of printing, but also the importance of critical thinking and the power of the press in shaping society. It was during these years that Franklin's fascination with books, knowledge, and public service deepened, setting the stage for the rest of his life. However, the apprenticeship was not to last forever. As a young man, Franklin's ambitions began to outgrow his brother's small printing operation. He dreamed of establishing his own printing business and expanding his horizons. At the age of 17, after a series of disagreements with his brother and feeling constrained by the small scale of the operation, Franklin made the bold decision to leave Boston. He set out on foot to Philadelphia, a city that would soon become the stage for the next chapter of his life. As he made his way south, Franklin carried with him the lessons learned from his early years, the importance of hard work, the value of knowledge, and the belief that a person could shape their own destiny. His journey to Philadelphia marked not only the physical departure from his family and home, but also the beginning of a new phase in his life, a phase in which Franklin would begin to carve out his own place in the world, laying the foundation for a future that would make him one of the most important figures in American history. At the age of 17, after years of apprenticeship in his brother's print shop, Benjamin Franklin made a decision that would chart the course for the rest of his life. He left his family in Boston, choosing to seek a new beginning in the bustling city of Philadelphia. With only a small sum of money, a few belongings, and the skills he had learned as an apprentice, Franklin set out on foot, travelling down the coast toward the promise of opportunity. Philadelphia in the early 18th century was a vibrant port city, a place of commerce, politics, and intellectual ferment. As Franklin walked the streets of his new home, he quickly realized the city was a world apart from the familiar streets of Boston. It was a city with a far greater range of ideas, with more room for innovation and expression. It was here that Franklin began to truly take control of his future. Upon arriving in Philadelphia, Franklin initially struggled to find his place. He had no connections, no friends, and no business. Yet he had ambition and a desire to succeed. His first job in Philadelphia was working for Samuel Keimer, a local printer. Franklin's time at Keimer's print shop was brief, but it was pivotal. He soon recognized that the operation was inefficient and poorly managed, and he believed he could do better. After working for Keimer for a short time, Franklin left, eventually opening his own printing business with the help of a small loan. He quickly gained recognition for his hard work, diligence, and innovative ideas. Franklin's reputation grew, and he became one of the most successful printers in Philadelphia. One of Franklin's first significant achievements was the publication of the Pennsylvania Gazette, a newspaper he acquired in 1729. Under Franklin's direction, the Gazette became one of the most popular and influential papers in the American colonies. He used the newspaper as a platform to discuss issues of politics, science, and public life. Through it, Franklin began to establish himself as a writer, philosopher, and public figure. It was during this period that Franklin's talents as a writer began to flourish. He wrote essays and satirical pieces that questioned the established norms and provided his readers with insights into the world around them. His work was known for its clarity, wit, and humour. Franklin was not merely a printer, he was a thinker and a communicator. His writing was grounded in practical wisdom, and his style was direct, yet engaging. The Pennsylvania Gazette was not just a source of income for Franklin. It became a vehicle for his ideas. One of his most notable pieces, Poor Richard's Almanac, was published yearly from 1732 to 1758. The almanac, with its proverbial wisdom, practical advice, and pithy sayings, became an immediate success. Its sayings, such as early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, resonated with the common folk and the educated alike. Through Poor Richard's Almanac, Franklin became a household name, beloved for his wit and moral teachings. Franklin's career as a printer and writer in Philadelphia was a triumph of ingenuity and persistence. But Franklin's talents were not confined to just the written word. As he built his business, he also began to expand his influence in other ways. He was an active member of Philadelphia's growing intellectual community and was involved in the founding of several important institutions, such as the first public library in America. He also played a role in the creation of the first volunteer fire department in the city, further solidifying his position as a leader in Philadelphia. Franklin's broad interests extended far beyond printing and writing. He was a man who, in many ways, saw no boundaries between science, public service, and business. His curiosity led him to explore the natural world, experimenting with electricity and contributing to the scientific community. He was not just a man of words, but of action, always looking for ways to improve the world around him. In Philadelphia, Franklin's social circle began to expand. He became friendly with other prominent figures of the time, such as the founding father, Thomas Paine, and the writer, John Adams. Through these relationships, Franklin was able to influence the ideas and debates that were shaping the future of America. His ability to connect with people from various walks of life, whether the common man, the intellectual elite, or the political figures of the day, was one of his greatest strengths. The success of his printing business, his almanac, and his other ventures allowed Franklin to expand his reach and influence. He was not content to simply be a successful businessman. He sought to use his position to promote ideas that could benefit society as a whole. He worked tirelessly to improve education, public health, and the infrastructure of Philadelphia. His vision for the city was one of progress and enlightenment. Franklin's time in Philadelphia was marked by a balance between his professional pursuits and his deep commitment to public service. He believed that a person's success should be measured not just by their wealth or social status, but by their ability to contribute to the greater good. This ethos would guide him throughout his life, and it was a philosophy that would serve him well in the years to come. At the age of 24, Franklin's growing prominence in Philadelphia allowed him to enter the public life more formally. He was appointed to the Pennsylvania Assembly, where he began to influence the political decisions that shaped the future of the colony. He became an advocate for public causes such as education and the establishment of a central postal system. Franklin's influence in the political arena continued to grow, and it wasn't long before he became a trusted voice in both local and international affairs. His move to Philadelphia marked the beginning of his transformation from an ambitious young apprentice to a respected printer, writer, inventor, and public figure. The city provided him with the opportunities he needed to realize his potential, and, in turn, Franklin's contributions to Philadelphia helped shape the city into one of the most important centers of commerce and intellectual life in the American colonies. As Benjamin Franklin settled into his life in Philadelphia, his interests and curiosity began to expand far beyond the realm of printing and writing. Franklin was a man whose mind was always searching for new ideas, new challenges, and new ways to improve the world around him. His contributions to science, particularly his groundbreaking experiments with electricity, would go on to shape both the scientific world and the course of American history. It was in the mid-1740s that Franklin's fascination with electricity began to take hold. At the time, electricity was still a mysterious force, poorly understood by scientists and philosophers. Though experiments had been conducted on electricity, many of these efforts were primitive and not yet linked to the practical applications that Franklin would later explore. Franklin, however, was not deterred by the scientific uncertainties of the time. He believed that science should be used to benefit humanity, and he approached the study of electricity with the same practical mindset that had driven his success in business and public life. In 1747, Franklin began his first experiments with electricity, conducting them in the quiet of his study. He used simple tools, metal rods, a kite, and a key to test his theories. He was driven by a singular question: could electricity be conducted through the air? His famous experiment with a kite in a thunderstorm in 1752 would go down in history as one of the most iconic moments in scientific exploration. The experiment itself was simple yet profound. Franklin flew a kite during a thunderstorm, attaching a key to the string, and observed that the key attracted electricity. This demonstrated that lightning was indeed a form of electricity. By conducting the experiment, Franklin not only confirmed the connection between electricity and lightning, but he also helped to establish the field of electricity as a legitimate area of scientific inquiry. This experiment, though simple in execution, marked a breakthrough in the understanding of electricity. Franklin's insights into the nature of electrical charge, his development of the concept of positive and negative charges, and his introduction of the term battery to describe a group of connected electrical devices were all contributions that shaped the future of electrical science. Franklin's work with electricity was not merely theoretical. He believed in practical applications that could improve everyday life. He invented the lightning rod, a device designed to protect buildings from lightning strikes. The lightning rod was based on Franklin's understanding of electricity and his belief that humans could use science to make the world safer. This invention proved to be one of his most enduring contributions to society, saving countless buildings from destruction by lightning. But Franklin's scientific pursuits did not end with electricity. He was a prolific inventor with a wide range of interests. Among his many inventions were bifocal glasses, the Franklin stove, and the glass harmonica. Each of these inventions reflected his pragmatic approach to science, finding ways to make people's lives easier, more efficient, and more comfortable. Bifocal glasses, for example, were created as a solution to Franklin's own vision problems. Rather than carrying two pairs of glasses, Franklin devised a way to combine them into one, with two distinct lenses for near and far vision. The invention of the Franklin stove, meanwhile, was a response to the inefficiency of the stoves used during Franklin's time. His stove, which used less fuel and provided more heat, became an important improvement in heating technology. The glass harmonica, an instrument made of a series of glass bowls or goblets, each tuned to a different pitch, was another example of Franklin's creativity. Though it was not as commercially successful as some of his other inventions, The glass harmonica was admired by many musicians of the time, including Mozart, who composed music for it. This invention reflected Franklin's ability to blend science, art, and music in a way that few others had. In addition to his many inventions, Franklin's contributions to the field of science were also marked by his role in the establishment of scientific societies. He was a founding member of the American Philosophical Society, which aimed to promote scientific research and the exchange of ideas. Franklin's involvement in the society helped to foster a climate of intellectual collaboration and scientific inquiry in America, setting the stage for future generations of American scientists. Franklin's work in science, particularly in electricity, helped to establish him as one of the leading figures in the intellectual world of the 18th century. His contributions were recognized not only in the American colonies, but also in Europe, where he became a respected member of the Royal Society of London. Franklin's scientific fame also played a role in his diplomatic success. His standing as a scientist and philosopher gave him credibility when he went abroad to represent America, and it was one of the factors that helped him forge strong relationships with European leaders, including the French. Franklin's work in science was driven by a deep belief that knowledge should be used for the betterment of society. He approached science with a sense of curiosity, but also with a sense of responsibility. He believed that scientific discoveries should be shared freely for the greater good of humanity. In many ways, Franklin embodied the ideals of the Enlightenment, an era of intellectual and scientific progress that sought to expand human knowledge and improve the condition of mankind. Through his scientific endeavors, Franklin not only contributed to the field of electricity, but also laid the groundwork for future advancements in technology and innovation. His inventions and ideas helped to shape the modern world, and his legacy in the field of science remains influential to this day. As Benjamin Franklin's career in printing, writing, and science flourished in Philadelphia, his interest began to extend into public life. Franklin was not merely content with his intellectual and financial achievements. He believed that individuals had a duty to contribute to the greater good of society. This commitment to public service would define much of his life and legacy, as Franklin worked tirelessly to improve the infrastructure, culture, and governance of Philadelphia and the American colonies. One of Franklin's earliest public service efforts was his involvement in the improvement of Philadelphia's infrastructure. In 1736, at the age of 30, Franklin helped establish the first volunteer fire company in the city, the Union Fire Company. This organization was a direct response to the frequent fires that plagued Philadelphia in the 18th century. Franklin's practical mind recognized the need for a more organized approach to fire prevention, and his initiative not only helped protect the city, but also marked the beginning of his long involvement in public affairs. Franklin's interest in civic improvement did not stop with firefighting. In 1731, he established the first public library in America, the Library Company of Philadelphia. As a lover of books and a firm believer in the power of knowledge, Franklin understood the importance of providing access to reading materials for the public. His library became a center for intellectual exchange, where ideas could be discussed and debated. This initiative was one of the first steps in Franklin's broader efforts to promote education and learning throughout the colonies. In addition to his work in education and fire prevention, Franklin was deeply involved in the improvement of public health. In 1749, he wrote a pamphlet titled A Proposal for Promoting Useful Knowledge Among the British Plantations in America, which outlined his vision for improving the health, education, and prosperity of the colonies. He advocated for better sanitation, the establishment of hospitals, and the promotion of public health measures, all of which were ahead of their time. Franklin's efforts to improve the quality of life for his fellow citizens were not limited to his immediate community, but extended across the broader colonial landscape. Franklin's political career began to take shape in the early 1730s when he was appointed to the Pennsylvania Assembly. Although he was not yet a member of the elite ruling class, his influence in the colony was growing. Franklin quickly became involved in the political affairs of Pennsylvania, using his printing business as a platform to express his views on governance. His editorials in the Pennsylvania Gazette were known for their sharp wit and insightful analysis of colonial politics, often questioning the policies of the British government. In 1747, Franklin was appointed as the Deputy Postmaster of Pennsylvania, a position that gave him a wider network of connections and allowed him to expand his influence. Through his work with the postal system, Franklin was able to foster communication between the colonies and with Europe. He was instrumental in improving the efficiency of the postal service, making it faster and more reliable. This was just one example of Franklin's commitment to improving the functioning of government and public institutions. Franklin's political career reached new heights when he was appointed to the Pennsylvania Assembly in 1751. It was in this role that he began to develop a reputation as a strong advocate for colonial rights. He was not content with merely accepting the status quo. Instead, he sought to reform and improve the way the colony was governed. Franklin advocated for better representation of the colonists in British-run government and worked tirelessly to advance the cause of American self-determination. One of Franklin's most significant political efforts during this period was his advocacy for the Albany Plan of Union, a proposal he presented in 1754 at the Albany Congress. The plan called for the creation of a unified government for the 13 colonies, which would have the power to manage common interests such as defense and trade. Though the plan was not adopted at the time, it demonstrated Franklin's foresight in recognizing the need for colonial unity. His idea of a united colonial government would eventually take shape during the American Revolution, as the colonies united to form the United States. As Franklin's political influence grew, so too did his involvement in international affairs. In 1757, he was sent to London as a representative of Pennsylvania to address a series of issues with the British government. Franklin's diplomatic skills were soon put to the test, as he sought to secure better treatment for the colonies and protect their interests. Though his mission to London was largely unsuccessful, it marked the beginning of Franklin's long career as a diplomat. He would later play a pivotal role in securing French support for the American Revolution, a task that would require all of his diplomatic acumen. Throughout his political career, Franklin remained deeply committed to the principles of liberty and self-government. He was an advocate for the rights of the American colonies, yet he also understood the complexities of governance and the importance of compromise. His ability to balance the demands of public service with his scientific and business interests made him a unique and influential figure in colonial America. In the years leading up to the American Revolution, Franklin's political career would continue to evolve. As tensions with Britain escalated, Franklin's role as a diplomat and advocate for American rights would become increasingly important. He would eventually serve as one of the founding fathers of the United States, playing a crucial role in shaping the new nation's identity and securing its independence. Through his work in public service, Franklin established himself as a leader who was not only concerned with his own success, but with the betterment of society as a whole. He understood that the strength of a nation lay in the strength of its institutions, and he worked tirelessly to build these institutions and improve the lives of his fellow citizens. Franklin's dedication to public service, his belief in the power of knowledge, and his commitment to the principles of liberty would make him one of the most influential figures in American history. As tensions between the American colonies and Britain grew in the 1760s and 1770s, Benjamin Franklin's role in colonial politics shifted dramatically. Franklin, who had spent much of his earlier life advocating for colonial unity and self-government, found himself at the center of the brewing conflict. The American Revolution, though still years away, was beginning to take shape, and Franklin, ever the pragmatic thinker, saw the need for action. By 1776, after years of advocating for colonial rights and protesting British policies, Franklin became one of the most trusted representatives of the American cause. His diplomatic experience, his reputation as a respected scientist, and his ability to navigate the complex world of European politics made him an invaluable asset to the growing revolutionary movement. In that year, he was chosen to represent the Continental Congress in France, a country whose support would prove crucial to the success of the revolution. The American Revolution, though largely a struggle for independence from Britain, was also a global conflict. Franklin understood that to win the revolution, the colonies needed not just military strength, but the backing of powerful foreign allies. His mission to France was an essential step in securing that support. Franklin's goal was clear: to persuade the French government to recognize the United States as an independent nation and to provide military and financial assistance to the revolutionary cause. When Franklin arrived in Paris in late 1776, he was not just a diplomat, he was a symbol of the American struggle for liberty. The French, long resentful of British dominance in Europe, were already sympathetic to the American cause. Yet Franklin's charm, intellect, and reputation as a leading figure of the Enlightenment made him an ideal emissary. He quickly became a favorite of French society, admired for his wit, humility, and wisdom. His presence in Paris was an endorsement of the revolution, and his diplomatic skill helped to solidify the French position. Franklin's diplomatic approach was a careful balance of persuasion, negotiation, and cultural understanding. He knew that the French court, particularly King Louis XVI and his ministers, were cautious in their dealings with the American colonies. France was deeply involved in European politics, and any move to ally with the American colonies had to be weighed carefully against the potential consequences for France's relations with Britain. Franklin, however, understood that the revolution was not just a struggle for independence. It was a movement that embodied the values of liberty and republicanism, values that resonated deeply with the French Enlightenment thinkers. Franklin's influence in France went far beyond the negotiating table. He was a powerful symbol of the American experiment in self-government. He was often seen in Parisian salons surrounded by intellectuals, artists, and philosophers, engaging in discussions about democracy, science, and governance. His ability to connect with the intellectual elite of France helped to build the ideological support for the American cause. One of Franklin's greatest diplomatic achievements was securing the Treaty of Alliance with France in 1778. The treaty, which recognized the United States as an independent nation and promised French military and financial support, was a turning point in the war. Franklin's success in gaining French aid was not just a triumph of diplomacy, but also a testament to his ability to navigate the complex and often dangerous world of international politics. The French support was crucial to the success of the American Revolution. The French provided essential supplies, military training, and troops, and their navy played a pivotal role in the defeat of the British at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. Without France's assistance, the American colonies might not have won their independence. Franklin's role in securing that support marked him as one of the most important figures in the Revolution, and his diplomacy was a key factor in the eventual success of the American cause. During his time in France, Franklin also worked tirelessly to maintain the alliance and ensure continued French support. He was involved in delicate negotiations to secure additional aid, and he worked to solidify the relationship between the United States and France in the post-revolutionary era. Franklin's diplomacy was not just about securing military support, but about laying the groundwork for a lasting friendship between the two nations. While Franklin's time in France was marked by diplomatic success, it was also a time of personal reflection. He was, after all, in his 70s by the time he left for Paris, and his life was already a remarkable journey of scientific discovery, political involvement, and public service. Yet, as he navigated the complex world of diplomacy in Paris, Franklin never lost sight of his core belief in the power of ideas and the importance of civic duty. The American Revolution, which Franklin had initially supported as a means of securing greater colonial rights, had now become something far greater, a fight for the fundamental principles of liberty, equality, and democracy. Franklin's work in France was not just about winning a war, it was about securing the future of a new nation, one built on the ideals of freedom and self-government. When the war ended in 1783 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris, Franklin returned to the United States as a hero. His diplomatic efforts had played a critical role in the revolution's success, and his work in France had helped to cement the international legitimacy of the United States. Franklin's return to America marked the end of one chapter of his life, but it was by no means the end of his contributions to the new republic. Even after the Revolution, Franklin continued to serve his country in various capacities. He was a delegate to the Constitutional Convention of 1787, where his wisdom and experience were invaluable in helping to shape the United States Constitution. His vision for the future of the nation was grounded in the same principles of liberty and republicanism that had guided his diplomatic efforts during the Revolution. After the American Revolution ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, Benjamin Franklin returned to the United States, having secured crucial support from France during the conflict. As one of the most revered figures of the Revolution, Franklin's return to America was marked by national acclaim. However, the young nation, now free from British rule, was still in a precarious position. The Articles of Confederation, the initial framework for governance, were proving ineffective in holding the newly independent states together. Franklin, now in his late 70s, would find himself once again at the heart of a critical moment in American history. In 1787, Franklin was selected as a delegate to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, where he would play a vital role in shaping the new nation's future. By this time, Franklin was older and frailer, yet his intellectual influence, wisdom, and reputation were invaluable to the proceedings. His deep understanding of human nature, experience in diplomacy, and commitment to Republican principles made him a key voice in the debates that would ultimately lead to the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. At the Constitutional Convention, Franklin took a back seat in the more vigorous debates, but his presence was felt deeply by all involved. He often served as a voice of reason and moderation, urging compromise where necessary. In particular, he advocated for unity among the states, recognizing that only through cooperation could the nation succeed. Despite the disagreements that marked the convention, Franklin's gentle persuasion and respect for diverse viewpoints helped bring about an atmosphere of cooperation. Franklin's contributions to the convention were not focused on specific policies, but rather on guiding the overall spirit of the debates. One of his most significant moments came when the convention seemed to be at an impasse. At the age of 81, Franklin delivered a speech urging his fellow delegates to put aside their personal differences for the sake of the nation's future. He implored them to act with the spirit of unity, recognizing that the Constitution would not be perfect, but would offer a framework for improvement over time. His appeal resonated with the delegates, and the resulting document reflected Franklin's belief in compromise, dialogue, and the need for a lasting system of governance. The U.S. Constitution was signed on September 17, 1787, and though Franklin was one of the last to sign, his support for the document was unwavering. In his later reflections, Franklin expressed his belief that the Constitution, though imperfect, was the best possible solution given the circumstances. He saw it as a living document, one that could be amended as the nation grew and evolved. After the Constitutional Convention, Franklin retired from public office but continued to be an influential figure in American politics. He remained active in advocating for the ratification of the Constitution, using his reputation and influence to encourage the states to adopt the new framework of government. His efforts were crucial in securing the approval of Pennsylvania, his home state for the Constitution. As Franklin's political career began to wind down, he turned his attention to other important causes. In his later years, he became an outspoken advocate for the abolition of slavery. Franklin had long struggled with the contradiction between his belief in liberty and the reality of slavery in America. But by the 1780s, he had fully embraced the cause of abolition. In 1787, he became president of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, and he continued to push for the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. His involvement in the abolition movement was a natural extension of his lifelong commitment to liberty and human rights. In addition to his advocacy for the abolition of slavery, Franklin also worked to improve the education system in America. In 1784, he wrote a pamphlet advocating for a system of public education in Pennsylvania, arguing that education was essential to the success of the new republic. Franklin believed that an educated citizenry was the foundation of a healthy democracy, and his efforts to promote education reflected his enduring belief in the power of knowledge. Franklin's later years were marked by declining health. He'd suffered from gout and other ailments for much of his life, and by the time he reached his 80s, his health had begun to fail him. Despite his physical frailty, Franklin remained mentally sharp, continuing to write and correspond with intellectuals and political leaders both in America and abroad. His correspondence, filled with reflections on life, politics, and human nature, remains one of the most valuable sources of insight into his character and his times. Franklin passed away on April 17, 1790, at the age of 84. His death was mourned not only in America but around the world. Franklin had lived a long and productive life, and his legacy as one of the founding fathers of the United States was firmly established. He had been a diplomat, a scientist, an inventor, a philosopher, and a statesman, contributing to every aspect of American society. Franklin's death marked the end of an era in American history, but his ideas and ideals lived on. His contributions to the founding of the United States, his role in securing independence, his advocacy for liberty and equality, and his commitment to the principles of democracy left an indelible mark on the young nation. Franklin's life embodied the spirit of the American Revolution and the promise of a new republic, and his influence would continue to shape the course of American history for generations to come. In the years following Franklin's death, his legacy was cemented as one of the most influential figures in American history. His ideas on government, education, and human rights remained foundational to the nation's identity. Franklin's contributions to the creation of the United States are immeasurable, and his commitment to public service and the common good continues to serve as an example for future generations. Benjamin Franklin's relationship with slavery was complex, evolving throughout his life as he wrestled with the contradiction between his ideals of liberty and the reality of slavery in colonial America. Like many of his contemporaries, Franklin initially accepted slavery as a part of the social and economic system of the time, but as his understanding of the issue deepened, he became one of its vocal opponents. In his early years, Franklin was involved in the slave trade, operating a printing business that printed advertisements for the sale of enslaved people. He owned enslaved individuals himself, as was common among wealthy landowners and urban merchants of the period. This reality was in direct contrast to the principles of liberty and self-governance that he so ardently espoused. While he may have justified the practice as a necessity in the world he lived in, Franklin, like many others, began to see the inherent moral and ethical contradictions in the institution of slavery. The shift in Franklin's thinking began in the mid-18th century, as he came into contact with abolitionist ideas circulating in the intellectual and religious communities. He began to question the system more deeply, influenced by the Enlightenment ideals of equality and natural rights. As he observed the developing abolition movement in Europe and heard the arguments of thinkers such as the Quakers, Franklin's views on slavery began to change. By the time Franklin reached his later years, he was firmly committed to the cause of abolition. He'd become a strong advocate for the freedom of enslaved people, recognizing that slavery was incompatible with the ideals of freedom and equality that the American Revolution had championed. This evolution in his thinking culminated in his leadership of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, a position he assumed in 1787. In this capacity, Franklin played a significant role in the movement to end slavery in Pennsylvania. He pushed for the gradual emancipation of enslaved people and worked to provide education and support for free black people in the state. His involvement with the Abolition Society was an extension of his belief in liberty and justice, as he saw slavery as a fundamental violation of the natural rights of human beings. One of Franklin's most significant contributions to the abolition movement came in 1790 when, at the age of 84, he presented a petition to the United States Congress calling for the immediate abolition of slavery. The petition, which he had helped draft as president of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, was one of the first formal calls for the abolition of slavery in the United States. It urged Congress to take action to end the practice of slavery and to establish the liberty of all men, regardless of race. Although Franklin did not live to see the abolition of slavery in the United States, his efforts in the 1780s helped lay the groundwork for the eventual end of the institution. His stance on slavery was a significant part of his legacy, and it reflected his broader commitment to human rights, liberty, and justice. Franklin's shift from a man who once owned enslaved people to one of the foremost abolitionists of his time illustrates his capacity for self-reflection and growth. His change of heart on the issue was not only personal, but political, as he sought to make amends for his past involvement in the institution and work toward a better future for all Americans. Franklin's views on slavery were not just shaped by his intellectual understanding of natural rights. They were also influenced by his deep sense of empathy and his experiences in public life. As he saw the growing contradictions between the fight for independence and the continued existence of slavery in the United States, he recognized the need for a moral reckoning. The revolution, in his mind, was not only a battle against foreign tyranny, but also an opportunity to dismantle the internal injustices that had long plagued American society. In the last years of his life, Franklin's stance on slavery was aligned with his broader philosophy of progress. He believed that society could and should evolve. Just as the American colonies had broken free from British rule, Franklin saw the abolition of slavery as another necessary step in the quest for a more just and equitable society. His advocacy for the rights of black people was not a sudden or isolated belief, but rather a culmination of his lifelong commitment to the Enlightenment values of reason, equality, and liberty. His later writings on slavery were unequivocal. In his memoirs, written in the years before his death, Franklin expressed regret over his earlier participation in the system, acknowledging that he had failed to see the injustice of slavery in his youth. His reflections on the matter were not just intellectual but moral, as he recognized that the fight for freedom could not be complete without the freedom of all people, regardless of race. Though Franklin did not live to witness the end of slavery in the United States, his efforts played a crucial role in the larger movement toward abolition. He became a symbol of the idea that even those who had once been complicit in the system could change, and that the nation itself could evolve toward a more just society. His advocacy for abolition set a powerful example for future generations of Americans who would continue the fight for the rights and freedoms of all people. Benjamin Franklin, as one of the most important figures in American history, left a legacy that has endured far beyond his lifetime. His contributions to the formation of the United States, his influence on its political thought, and his role in shaping its institutions have made him a symbol of the values that the country was founded upon. As a diplomat, scientist, writer, and public servant, Franklin's vision of liberty, democracy, and intellectual curiosity would continue to shape American society long after his death. One of Franklin's most significant legacies was his role in shaping the political philosophy of the United States. He was not only a key figure in the American Revolution, but also in the creation of the US government. His belief in the importance of civic virtue, the rule of law, and the separation of powers deeply influenced the design of the US Constitution. Franklin's advocacy for a balanced government, one that promoted the common good while protecting individual rights, would be reflected in the Constitution's framework, which he helped shape. Franklin's influence on American politics was not limited to the founding of the nation. His ideas about government, liberty, and civic responsibility continue to resonate in American political thought. His belief that government should serve the people and that power should be distributed among different branches of government to prevent any one group from becoming too powerful was fundamental to the system of checks and balances enshrined in the Constitution. Franklin's commitment to the principles of republicanism, which emphasize self-government, individual rights, and the common good, continues to be a cornerstone of American political philosophy. In addition to his influence on political thought, Franklin made lasting contributions to the development of American society in other important ways. One of his most enduring legacies was his commitment to education. Franklin believed that education was essential for the success of the new republic. He understood that for a democracy to thrive, its citizens must be informed, thoughtful, and engaged. His efforts to promote public education, both through his writings and his actions, laid the groundwork for the American education system. Franklin's establishment of the first public library in Philadelphia was one of his earliest and most important contributions to education. In 1731, he founded the Library Company of Philadelphia, which provided access to books and information to the public. This library became a center for intellectual exchange, helping to foster a culture of learning and debate in the colonies. Franklin's belief in the power of knowledge extended beyond the establishment of libraries. He also advocated for the creation of schools and universities to ensure that future generations had the tools they needed to succeed. One of Franklin's greatest educational achievements was the founding of the University of Pennsylvania in 1740. As an advocate for practical, real-world education, Franklin believed that higher education should not be limited to classical studies, but should also include subjects that would prepare students for careers in business, science, and public service. His vision for education was one that emphasized the practical application of knowledge, and the University of Pennsylvania became a model for American higher education. Today, the university remains one of the most prestigious institutions of higher learning in the United States. Beyond his contributions to education, Franklin's legacy in American society can also be seen in his efforts to improve public health and the well-being of his fellow citizens. His work in establishing volunteer fire companies, advocating for better sanitation, and promoting the importance of public health laid the foundation for the modern public health system. Franklin believed that a healthy society was essential for the success of the new nation, and his efforts in this area have had a lasting impact on the health and safety of generations of Americans. Franklin's influence extended to the world of science and invention as well. His experiments with electricity, his invention of the lightning rod, and his development of bifocal glasses and the Franklin stove were all innovations that improved the quality of life for people in America and around the world. His scientific discoveries, particularly in the field of electricity, helped lay the foundation for the modern understanding of physics and electricity. Franklin's scientific contributions earned him the respect of his peers and established him as one of the leading intellectual figures of his time. Even more than his specific achievements, Franklin's legacy is defined by his belief in the importance of individual responsibility and the pursuit of self-improvement. His 13 virtues, a list of moral principles that he sought to live by, encapsulate his belief that personal discipline, hard work, and a commitment to doing good for others were key to living a fulfilling life. Franklin's commitment to self-improvement, both intellectually and morally, set an example for generations of Americans. His life serves as a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge, the cultivation of good character, and a dedication to public service are the pillars of a successful society. Franklin's influence also extended beyond the borders of the United States. His work as a diplomat, particularly his efforts to secure French support during the American Revolution, made him a key figure in shaping the international relationships of the early United States. Franklin's diplomatic skills and his ability to represent American interests abroad were instrumental in securing the support of France, which was vital to the success of the American Revolution. His efforts helped to establish the United States as an independent nation on the world stage, and his diplomatic work laid the groundwork for future American foreign policy. Finally, Franklin's legacy can be seen in the way he has been remembered and honored by subsequent generations. His image has become synonymous with the ideals of liberty, independence, and intellectual curiosity that define the United States. Statues, memorials, and schools have been named in his honor, and his image appears on the $100 bill, a symbol of his enduring importance to the nation. Franklin's life and work continue to inspire people around the world, not only as a founding father of the United States, but as a model of the values that make for a just and prosperous society. Benjamin Franklin was not just a key figure in American history. He was also a leading intellectual of the Enlightenment, a period of intellectual and philosophical growth that emphasized reason, science, and individual rights. Though Franklin was born in a time when many of the Enlightenment's greatest thinkers were still in their infancy, he embraced its principles early on and became one of its most influential figures. His contributions to the movement, both in the realm of ideas and through his actions, shaped the intellectual landscape of both Europe and the United States. The Enlightenment, which swept across Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, was rooted in the belief that human progress could be achieved through the application of reason, the pursuit of knowledge, and the rejection of superstition and dogma. It emphasized the importance of individual liberty, the idea of a social contract, and the pursuit of happiness through intellectual and moral development. Franklin, with his natural curiosity and scientific acumen, was deeply aligned with these values and became a central figure in both the American and European Enlightenment movements. Franklin's early exposure to Enlightenment thinkers such as John Locke, Isaac Newton, and Voltaire helped shape his intellectual development. He was fascinated by their ideas and often engaged with them in his own work. Locke's theories on government, which emphasized the natural rights of individuals and the importance of consent in governance, resonated deeply with Franklin. These ideas would later influence his contributions to the American Revolution and the creation of the US government. Franklin's scientific interests, particularly in electricity, were also shaped by the Enlightenment's emphasis on empirical observation and experimentation. He believed that science should be used to improve society, a sentiment that aligned with the Enlightenment's commitment to progress through reason and discovery. One of Franklin's most significant intellectual contributions was his role in the American Philosophical Society, which he founded in 1743. The society was one of the first of its kind in the American colonies, and it played a crucial role in fostering intellectual exchange and promoting scientific and philosophical inquiry. Franklin envisioned the society as a place where people could come together to share knowledge and ideas, Free from the constraints of religious dogma or political ideology, it became a hub for Enlightenment thought in the United States, and its members included many of the leading thinkers of the time. Through the American Philosophical Society and his many other endeavors, Franklin helped to establish an intellectual community that emphasized the pursuit of knowledge and the application of reason to solve practical problems. His scientific experiments, particularly his work with electricity, were a testament to the Enlightenment's belief in the power of observation and empirical evidence. Franklin's invention of the lightning rod, for example, was a direct result of his scientific curiosity and his desire to improve the lives of ordinary people. His scientific work, along with his writings on moral philosophy and politics, made him one of the most prominent intellectuals of his time. Franklin's intellectual influence also extended to Europe, where he became a celebrated figure among the leading thinkers of the Enlightenment. He was widely admired for his practical wisdom, his ability to blend science with common sense, and his commitment to the principles of liberty and progress. Franklin's reputation as a philosopher and scientist led to his invitation to the Royal Society of London, one of the world's most prestigious scientific organizations. His contributions to the study of electricity earned him a fellowship at the Society, and he was respected by many of Europe's leading scientific minds. Franklin's relationship with French Enlightenment thinkers was particularly notable. During his time in Paris as a diplomat, he became friends with some of the most influential intellectuals of the time, including Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and Denis Diderot. These thinkers were at the forefront of the movement to challenge traditional authority and promote reason, liberty, and equality. Franklin's interactions with these figures helped to strengthen the intellectual ties between America and France, and played a key role in the development of the revolutionary ideas that would shape both the French and American revolutions. Franklin's contributions to the Enlightenment were not limited to his scientific and philosophical work. He also played a key role in the dissemination of Enlightenment ideas through his writings. His Poor Richard's Almanac, for example, was filled with proverbs and moral advice that reflected the Enlightenment's emphasis on virtue, self-improvement, and rationality. The almanac was not only a practical guide for everyday life, but also a reflection of Franklin's belief that individuals should use their reason and their moral judgment to live better lives. Franklin's writings on politics, religion, and society were similarly infused with the ideas of the Enlightenment. He was a firm believer in the separation of church and state, the importance of religious tolerance, and the necessity of an informed and educated citizenry. His ideas on governance, particularly his support for republicanism, and the importance of checks and balances in government, were influenced by the Enlightenment's focus on creating political systems that were based on reason and the protection of individual rights. In many ways, Franklin embodied the ideals of the Enlightenment. He was a man who believed in the power of reason, the importance of education, and the potential for human progress. His contributions to science, philosophy, and politics were not just intellectual pursuits. They were deeply tied to his desire to improve the human condition. Franklin's belief that knowledge should be used for the betterment of society, his commitment to liberty and equality, and his advocacy for education and the exchange of ideas made him one of the most important figures of the Enlightenment in America. Benjamin Franklin was not only a founding father and diplomat, but also one of the most celebrated scientists and inventors of his time. His contributions to scientific knowledge were vast, and his work in fields such as meteorology, physics, and engineering helped to lay the foundation for many modern scientific principles. Franklin's ability to blend theory with practical application marked him as a unique figure in the world of science, and his inventions and discoveries continue to be celebrated today. While Franklin is perhaps best known for his experiments with electricity, his scientific pursuits extended far beyond that. His curiosity about the natural world led him to explore a wide variety of subjects, from the study of ocean currents to the development of new technologies that would improve everyday life. Franklin's work in these areas was driven by a belief in the practical application of knowledge, that science should not be confined to theoretical speculation, but should be used to solve real-world problems. One of Franklin's major scientific contributions was his work in meteorology. As an avid observer of the weather, Franklin sought to understand the patterns of winds, storms, and other atmospheric phenomena. His interest in the subject led him to make several important observations and discoveries. In 1749, Franklin published a paper on the Gulf Stream, the powerful current of warm water that flows from the Gulf of Mexico along the eastern coast of North America. Through his research, Franklin was the first to recognize the Gulf Stream's role in shaping weather patterns and in the navigation of ships. Franklin's study of storms also contributed to the development of early meteorological theory. He was one of the first scientists to recognize the connection between thunderstorms and the electricity in the air. He hypothesized that storms were caused by electrical discharges, a concept that laid the groundwork for later research into lightning and atmospheric electricity. His work in this area, though not as widely known as his contributions to electricity, was an important step in the development of meteorology as a scientific field. In addition to his work in meteorology, Franklin was also an inventor of remarkable ingenuity. He's perhaps best known for his invention of the lightning rod, a device that protected buildings from lightning strikes. The lightning rod was a direct result of his experiments with electricity, and it demonstrated Franklin's ability to apply scientific knowledge to everyday problems. The invention of the lightning rod saved countless lives and properties, making it one of Franklin's most enduring contributions to public safety. Another of Franklin's notable inventions was the bifocal glasses. As Franklin aged, he found it increasingly difficult to read without the aid of reading glasses, but he also needed a different pair for seeing objects at a distance. Instead of carrying two separate pairs of glasses, Franklin devised a solution: bifocals, glasses that combine two lenses in one frame, one for close vision and one for distance. This practical invention, which Franklin himself used for the rest of his life, revolutionized vision correction and remains in widespread use today. Franklin was also responsible for the development of the Franklin stove, a device designed to provide more efficient heating with less fuel. The stove, which was a significant improvement over the traditional open fireplace, used a closed metal box to circulate warm air, making it much more effective at heating a room. Like many of Franklin's inventions, the Franklin stove reflected his practical mindset. He believed that science should serve to improve the lives of ordinary people, and the Franklin stove was a perfect example of this philosophy. In addition to these inventions, Franklin made contributions to a variety of other practical technologies. He invented the odometer, a device for measuring the distance traveled by a vehicle, and the flexible urinary catheter, which helped to alleviate the suffering of those with medical conditions affecting the bladder. He also worked on improving the design of the stove for heating, creating the siphon, a type of heat exchanger. These inventions, though perhaps not as famous as his other work, reflect Franklin's deep commitment to improving the quality of life through practical, innovative solutions. Franklin's scientific work extended to a wide range of subjects, including oceanography, the study of wind currents, and the nature of the atmosphere. He was a voracious reader and drew upon a vast array of sources, incorporating his own observations with the work of other scientists and intellectuals. Franklin's method of conducting experiments through observation, testing, and practical application was a model for future generations of scientists. His approach to science was both empirical and inquisitive, and his work in the field was groundbreaking in many respects. Beyond his individual scientific discoveries, Franklin played a crucial role in fostering a culture of scientific inquiry in America. As a founding member of the American Philosophical Society, he helped to create a space where intellectuals, scientists, and philosophers could come together to share ideas and collaborate. The society became a centre for scientific and philosophical discussion, and its members contributed to the development of various fields of knowledge. Franklin's role in the society reflected his broader commitment to the spread of knowledge and the promotion of scientific progress. Franklin's work as a scientist and inventor was not just an intellectual pursuit. It was also deeply connected to his desire to improve society. He believed that science should be used to solve practical problems, whether by developing technologies that made life easier or by understanding natural phenomena to benefit humanity. His work in electricity, for example, was not simply an academic interest. It was motivated by his desire to protect people from lightning strikes and to improve the safety of buildings. Similarly, his inventions, such as the lightning rod and the bifocal glasses, were practical solutions that had a lasting impact on everyday life. In many ways, Franklin's scientific contributions were a reflection of his broader worldview, a belief that progress and improvement were possible through the application of reason and knowledge. His work as a scientist and inventor, combined with his dedication to public service and his commitment to education, made him one of the most influential figures of the 18th century. Franklin's legacy in science and invention remains an important part of his enduring influence on American society and the world. Benjamin Franklin's life was guided by a personal philosophy rooted in self-discipline, moral development, and the pursuit of virtue. Franklin believed that each individual had a responsibility to cultivate their character and improve their actions for the benefit of society. This commitment to personal growth was embodied in his creation of the 13 Virtues, a set of moral principles that he developed to guide his own behavior and to encourage others to do the same. The 13 Virtues were a list of virtues that Franklin believed were essential for leading a good and meaningful life. They were practical, everyday principles designed to promote personal responsibility, integrity, and rational living. Franklin's philosophy was rooted in the belief that human beings could improve their own character through conscious effort, and that doing so would lead to a better society as a whole. His focus was not on abstract moral theories, but on tangible, actionable habits that could be applied to everyday life. Franklin first compiled his list of virtues around 1726, when he was in his early 20s. The virtues were based on his own experiences and observations of life, and he made them a central part of his personal and professional development. He wrote out the list, and each day he focused on improving one virtue, keeping track of his progress in a notebook. He described this as a method of moral perfection, where each virtue would be practiced and reflected upon, one at a time, until it became ingrained in his character. As Benjamin Franklin entered his later years, his thoughts turned increasingly toward his legacy and the future of the United States. Franklin had lived a long and remarkable life, one filled with achievements in science, diplomacy, politics, and public service. But as he grew older, he also became more reflective, contemplating his place in history and the impact of his life's work. By the time Franklin returned to America from France in 1785, he was already in his 80s, a period of his life marked by declining health, but also an enduring intellectual vitality. His contributions to the founding of the United States were secure, but Franklin was keenly aware of the fragile nature of human life. He had long been interested in the questions of mortality, the nature of existence, and the afterlife, and as he aged, he reflected on these issues with increasing seriousness. One of the themes that Franklin grappled with in his later years was the idea of human mortality. In his writings, he often discussed the inevitability of death, but he approached the subject with a practical, almost scientific outlook. He believed that death was a natural part of life, and that it was not to be feared, but accepted. In his autobiography, Franklin famously wrote, "In this world, nothing can be said to be certain, except death and taxes." This pragmatic acceptance of death was part of his broader philosophy that focused on living life in a way that was both productive and morally sound. As he reflected on his own life, Franklin found satisfaction in the work he had done to help shape the fledgling nation. His diplomatic success in securing French support during the American Revolution, his role in drafting the U.S. Constitution, and his contributions to science and public service were all accomplishments that he could look back on with pride. Yet, Franklin was also aware of the limitations of his time on Earth. In his later years, he expressed a sense of urgency about securing the future of the nation, as he believed that the country's success was far from guaranteed. In one of his final writings, Franklin acknowledged the challenges that the new nation would face in the years to come. In 1789, when the USA Constitution was ratified, Franklin's role as a founder was acknowledged by his peers, but he expressed his doubts about the permanence of the Republic. He believed that the new government, though an admirable experiment in self-government, would require constant vigilance and moral discipline from its citizens in order to succeed. Franklin's thoughts on the future of the nation were colored by his understanding of human nature. He knew that power could be easily abused, and that maintaining liberty and democracy required the active participation of every citizen. Despite his concerns about the future, Franklin also expressed hope for the nation he had helped to create. He was a firm believer in the idea that human progress was possible, and that the pursuit of knowledge and virtue could lead to a better society. As an advocate for education, Franklin hoped that future generations of Americans would continue to value learning, self-improvement, and civic duty. In his final years, he also became increasingly vocal about the need for a strong moral foundation for the nation. He believed that the principles of liberty, equality, and justice that had guided the American Revolution must continue to be upheld in the new republic. Franklin's reflections on aging and mortality were not just intellectual exercises, they were also deeply personal. As he grew older, Franklin increasingly turned to his family and friends for comfort, finding solace in the relationships that had sustained him throughout his life. His letters, many of which were written to his daughter Sally Franklin and other loved ones, reflect a deep sense of affection and concern for the future. He expressed his hopes for the happiness and well-being of his children, and his desire to leave them with a better world than the one he had inherited. Franklin's death on April 17, 1790, at the age of 84, was mourned by people around the world. He had lived a full life, one marked by remarkable achievements and a deep commitment to the values of liberty, reason, and public service. Franklin's legacy as a founding father of the United States, as a leading intellectual of the Enlightenment, and as a champion of scientific progress was secure. His ideas continued to influence American thought and policy long after his death, and his work set the stage for the development of a nation that would grow to become a beacon of democracy and freedom. In the years following his death, Franklin's legacy continued to grow. Statues were erected in his honor, schools were named after him, and his image appeared on the US $100 bill, a symbol of his enduring importance to the nation. Franklin's writings, especially his autobiography and his letters, continued to inspire generations of Americans, offering valuable lessons in virtue, public service, and the pursuit of knowledge. As he faced the end of his life, Franklin remained committed to his belief in the potential for human progress. He saw the creation of the United States as a step toward a more just and enlightened world, but he also understood that the work of building a better society was never finished. In his later years, Franklin's focus on his legacy was not driven by a desire for personal recognition, but by his deep concern for the future of the nation and the principles on which it was founded. In the end, Franklin's life was a testament to the power of ideas and the importance of living according to one's principles. His reflections on aging, mortality, and legacy offer a profound insight into his character, one that was both practical and philosophical, deeply committed to the betterment of society and the advancement of human knowledge. As Benjamin Franklin entered his final years, his health began to decline, but his mind remained sharp and reflective. Though he was no longer the active public figure he once was, Franklin's thoughts on the new republic he helped to create remained deeply influential. In his later years, Franklin spent much of his time contemplating the state of the United States and offering his wisdom on the future of the nation. His reflections on the challenges that the new republic would face serve as an important part of his legacy. In 1787, Franklin had been one of the oldest and most respected delegates at the Constitutional Convention. At the time, he was 81 years old, frail, and plagued by gout and other health problems. But despite his age, Franklin's contributions to the creation of the Constitution were significant. His experience as a diplomat and his deep understanding of human nature helped to guide the proceedings toward compromise and unity. He believed that the new Constitution, though imperfect, was the best possible solution for the nation at that time. He was adamant that the framers of the Constitution had done their best to create a balanced and fair system of government, and that it would require constant vigilance to preserve the freedoms it guaranteed. After the Constitution was signed, Franklin returned to Philadelphia, where he would spend the last few years of his life. Though he was no longer involved in the day-to-day affairs of government, Franklin continued to offer his advice to those in power, particularly on the need for education, moral character, and civic responsibility. He understood that the success of the new republic would depend not only on its political structure, but on the virtue and commitment of its citizens. In his later years, Franklin also expressed his concerns about the potential dangers to the republic. He warned of the threats posed by factions, tyranny, and the erosion of democratic principles. He believed that the survival of the United States depended on the continued participation of an informed and virtuous citizenry. Franklin was deeply aware of the fragility of the republic, and he saw the dangers of complacency in the face of political and social challenges. Despite his concerns, Franklin remained optimistic about the future of the United States. He had faith in the principles of liberty and democracy that the country was founded upon. He believed that, with the right leadership and the active involvement of its people, the republic could endure and prosper. Franklin's commitment to these principles was unwavering, and his legacy as one of the nation's founders was firmly cemented. In the final years of his life, Franklin's thoughts also turned to the issue of slavery, an institution that he had once accepted but later came to oppose. As an abolitionist, Franklin worked tirelessly to promote the freedom of enslaved people in Pennsylvania and across the United States. He became president of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery in 1787, and he worked to advocate for the gradual emancipation of enslaved people. He also continued to speak out against the institution of slavery in his writings and public speeches. Franklin's commitment to the abolition of slavery was one of the defining aspects of his later years, and his efforts helped to lay the groundwork for the eventual end of slavery in the United States. Franklin's health continued to decline in the late 1780s, and by 1790 he was no longer able to participate in public life. He spent his final months at his home in Philadelphia, surrounded by his family and friends. Despite his frailty, he remained engaged in intellectual pursuits, corresponding with political leaders, scientists, and thinkers from around the world. His letters, filled with reflections on politics, society, and morality, remained a source of guidance for many. Franklin passed away on April 17, 1790, at the age of 84. His death marked the end of an era in American history. Franklin had lived a full and extraordinary life, one that spanned the early years of the American Revolution, the founding of the United States, and the rise of the Enlightenment in both Europe and America. He had been a key figure in the American Revolution, a philosopher, a scientist, an inventor, and a diplomat. Franklin's contributions to the formation of the United States were immeasurable, and his ideas about liberty, democracy, and public service left an indelible mark on the young nation. In the wake of Franklin's death, the nation mourned the loss of one of its greatest figures. His influence on the founding of the United States, as well as his commitment to public service and moral virtue, became a model for future generations. Franklin's legacy was not just in the political documents he helped create or the inventions he designed. It was also in the ideas he championed about the importance of education, civic responsibility, and the pursuit of knowledge. Franklin had lived a life that embodied the best of the American spirit, one of intellectual curiosity, public service, and a commitment to the common good. Franklin's death did not end his influence on the nation. In the years that followed, his ideas and ideals would continue to shape the political and intellectual development of the United States. Statues of Franklin were erected in cities across the country, schools were named in his honor, and his writings were studied by generations of Americans. His image, in fact, would later appear on the $100 bill, forever cementing his place in American history as one of the most important figures in the founding of the nation. Benjamin Franklin's influence extended far beyond the realm of politics and science. He also played a pivotal role in shaping the cultural identity of the United States. His ideas, writings, and inventions contributed not only to the intellectual foundation of the nation, but also to the broader American ethos. Franklin's commitment to self-improvement, civic responsibility, and public service resonated deeply with the emerging values of the new republic, and his life continues to serve as a model of the American spirit. One of Franklin's most lasting contributions to American culture was his embodiment of the ideals of self-reliance and industriousness. From his early years as an apprentice to his later work as a printer, writer, and inventor, Franklin's life was a testament to the power of hard work, perseverance, and self-discipline. His personal philosophy, encapsulated in his 13 virtues, emphasized the importance of personal responsibility, the pursuit of knowledge, and the cultivation of good character. These values were not just theoretical for Franklin, they were practical principles that he lived by, and they became central to the American identity. Franklin's most famous work, Poor Richard's Almanac, was filled with aphorisms and maxims that emphasize these ideals. His famous adage, "Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise," encapsulated the American ethos of hard work and discipline. The almanac was not only a practical guide for everyday life, but also a reflection of Franklin's belief that individuals could improve their lives through effort and determination. The success of Poor Richard's Almanac, which was published annually for over 25 years, made Franklin one of the most widely read and influential figures in colonial America. His words became part of the cultural fabric, offering practical advice that resonated with people across the social spectrum. Franklin's ideas about the importance of education and intellectual curiosity also had a profound impact on American culture. He was one of the earliest proponents of the belief that an educated citizenry was essential for the success of the Republic. His founding of the Library Company of Philadelphia in 1731 and the University of Pennsylvania in 1740 were groundbreaking efforts to make knowledge more accessible to the public. Franklin's vision for education was one that emphasized practical knowledge and the development of civic virtue, rather than simply a focus on classical learning. He believed that education should serve the needs of society and prepare individuals to contribute to the common good. This belief laid the foundation for the development of a system of public education in the United States, which would become one of the defining features of the country. Franklin's contributions to American culture were not limited to his intellectual and philosophical writings. His inventions also had a lasting impact on everyday life. His inventions, such as the lightning rod, bifocal glasses, and the Franklin stove, were practical solutions that improved the quality of life for people in America and beyond. These inventions reflected Franklin's pragmatic approach to science, and his belief that knowledge should be applied to solving real-world problems. His focus on practical innovation made him one of the most influential inventors of the 18th century, and his work continues to inspire inventors and scientists to this day. Franklin's influence on American culture can also be seen in his role as a diplomat and his contributions to the development of the American political system. His ability to represent the interests of the American colonies in Europe, and his role in securing French support during the American Revolution were key factors in the success of the Revolution. Franklin's diplomatic work was marked by his charm, wit, and ability to navigate complex political situations. He was not only a master of diplomacy but also a skilled communicator, able to articulate the ideals of the American Revolution in ways that resonated with people both in America and abroad. His work laid the foundation for the development of American foreign policy and helped to establish the United States as a respected player on the world stage. Franklin's cultural impact is also evident in the way he became a symbol of the American ideal. His life story, one of humble beginnings, self-made success, and commitment to the greater good, embodied the values of the American dream. Franklin's rise from an apprentice printer to one of the most influential figures in the world was a testament to the possibility of upward mobility and the potential for individuals to shape their own destinies. His personal philosophy, which emphasized the importance of virtue, education, and civic engagement, became a model for Americans to follow as they built the new nation. In the years following Franklin's death, his image and ideas continued to shape American culture. His writings were widely read, and his contributions to the founding of the United States were celebrated as essential to the nation's success. Statues of Franklin were erected in cities across the country, and his image appeared on the US $100 bill, a lasting symbol of his importance to the nation. Franklin's legacy as a founder, inventor, and philosopher became central to the American identity, and his values of self-reliance, civic responsibility, and intellectual curiosity continue to be embraced by generations of Americans. Franklin's influence was not limited to the United States. As an intellectual leader of the Enlightenment, he was celebrated in Europe as well. His ideas about liberty, democracy, and the practical application of knowledge resonated with Enlightenment thinkers, and his contributions to science and philosophy helped to shape the intellectual currents of the time. Franklin's reputation as a polymath, someone who was both a scientist and a statesman, made him a figure of global importance. His ability to bridge the worlds of science, politics, and philosophy allowed him to play a unique role in shaping the modern world. Today, Benjamin Franklin's impact on American culture remains profound. His ideas about the importance of education, civic responsibility, and the application of reason continue to shape the values of the United States. His image, his words, and his contributions to the country's founding remain a part of the national consciousness, and his legacy continues to inspire Americans to strive for self-improvement, public service, and a better society. Benjamin Franklin's contributions to American political thought are among the most profound and enduring aspects of his legacy. His views on government, liberty, and the role of citizens in a democratic society helped shape the foundation of the United States. Franklin's influence can be seen in the development of the American political system, in the framing of the U.S. Constitution, and in the very ideals that continue to define the country today. Franklin's political philosophy was deeply rooted in his belief in the importance of liberty and individual rights. He was a strong advocate for self-government, believing that the people should have the power to shape their own destiny through democratic means. He was critical of any form of government that concentrated power in the hands of a few, whether it be a monarchy or an aristocracy. Franklin believed that a truly just government was one that were accountable to the people and that protected the natural rights of all citizens. His views on government were shaped by his experiences both in the American colonies and abroad. As a diplomat in France, Franklin observed the functioning of different political systems and saw firsthand the dangers of absolute monarchy. He was deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinkers, particularly those who championed the idea of natural rights and the social contract, such as John Locke and Montesquieu. Franklin's political ideas were grounded in the principles of reason, justice, and the protection of individual freedoms. One of Franklin's key contributions to American political thought was his advocacy for the separation of powers within government. He believed that no one branch of government should have unchecked power, and that the system of checks and balances was essential to prevent tyranny. This idea was instrumental in the design of the U.S. Constitution, which divided power between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches in order to ensure that no one branch could dominate the others. Franklin also believed that government should be practical and responsive to the needs of the people. He was a firm believer in the idea that government existed to serve its citizens and that it should be focused on promoting the common good. This belief was reflected in his support for policies that promoted education, public health, and the welfare of the people. He saw the role of government as being one of active engagement in improving society, whether through the establishment of public institutions, the promotion of scientific inquiry, or the protection of individual liberties. In addition to his views on the structure of government, Franklin also emphasized the importance of civic virtue in a democracy. He believed that for a republic to function properly, its citizens had to be engaged, informed, and morally responsible. Franklin's 13 virtues, which emphasized traits such as temperance, resolution, and justice, were part of his broader philosophy that individuals had a duty to cultivate their own character and contribute to the greater good of society. He believed that a virtuous and active citizenry was the foundation of a successful democracy. Franklin's emphasis on civic virtue extended to his thoughts on the importance of education and the cultivation of reason. He believed that an educated populace was essential for the success of the Republic, as it would empower individuals to make informed decisions and actively participate in the democratic process. His founding of the Library Company of Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, and his support for public education were all expressions of his belief in the importance of intellectual development and civic engagement. Franklin's influence on American political thought can also be seen in his advocacy for religious tolerance and the separation of church and state. While Franklin was deeply spiritual and held his own religious beliefs, he was firmly against the idea of any one religion having control over government. He understood that religious freedom was a cornerstone of liberty, and he argued that government should not impose religious dogma on its citizens. His belief in religious tolerance was in line with the Enlightenment ideals of reason and freedom, and it became a key principle in the formation of American political thought. Another important aspect of Franklin's political philosophy was his commitment to equality and social justice. While Franklin was not an outspoken advocate for the abolition of slavery in his early years, his views evolved over time, and by the end of his life he was a staunch opponent of the institution. He became an active member of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, and worked to promote the gradual emancipation of enslaved people. His views on slavery reflected his broader commitment to the ideals of liberty and equality, and his work helped to lay the groundwork for the eventual abolition of slavery in the United States. Franklin's influence on American political thought also extended to his views on foreign policy. As a diplomat, Franklin played a crucial role in securing French support for the American Revolution, and his diplomatic efforts helped to establish the United States as an independent nation. He believed that the United States should maintain strong diplomatic relations with other nations, but should also be careful not to become entangled in unnecessary foreign conflicts. Franklin's approach to foreign policy was grounded in his belief in the importance of national sovereignty and the protection of American interests. In the years following Franklin's death, his political ideas continued to shape American political thought. His belief in the importance of liberty, democracy, and civic virtue remained central to the ideals of the United States, and his contributions to the framing of the Constitution and the development of American governance were integral to the success of the new republic. Franklin's views on the structure of government, the role of citizens, and the principles of justice and equality have continued to influence generations of Americans and have remained foundational to the nation's identity. Franklin's political philosophy was one of practical wisdom, grounded in his deep understanding of human nature and his belief in the potential for progress. He recognized that democracy was a fragile experiment, one that required the active participation of an informed and virtuous citizenry. His contributions to the development of American political thought continue to resonate today, as his ideas about government, liberty, and civic responsibility remain central to the ongoing pursuit of a more just and democratic society. Benjamin Franklin's legacy is not confined to the 18th century. Despite the passage of time, his ideas, inventions, and moral philosophy continue to influence modern society in ways both profound and subtle. As one of the most forward-thinking individuals of his era, Franklin's contributions to science, politics, and culture were groundbreaking, and his principles remain relevant today in our ongoing efforts to build a just, prosperous, and enlightened society. One of the most striking aspects of Franklin's enduring relevance is his philosophy of self-improvement. In a world that increasingly emphasizes personal development, Franklin's 13 virtues remain a powerful guide to living a meaningful and disciplined life. His belief in the power of individual responsibility and the pursuit of virtue resonates with contemporary efforts to cultivate personal growth. From the popularity of self-help literature to the rise of mindfulness and meditation practices, Franklin's approach to self-discipline, which emphasized balance and gradual improvement, aligns closely with modern approaches to personal development that focus on small, incremental changes rather than radical transformations. Franklin's commitment to education is another aspect of his legacy that continues to shape modern society. He was a pioneer in advocating for public education and the democratization of knowledge, believing that an informed and educated citizenry was essential for the success of the Republic. In a world where access to education is seen as a fundamental right, Franklin's vision for a system of public learning remains a guiding principle. The institutions he helped to establish, such as the Library Company of Philadelphia and the University of Pennsylvania, laid the foundation for a culture of intellectual exchange and practical learning that continues to thrive today. Franklin's contributions to science, particularly his work with electricity, have had an even more lasting impact on modern technology. His experiments with electrical conduction and his invention of the lightning rod were foundational to the development of modern electrical engineering. Today, electricity is central to every aspect of our lives, from the devices we use to communicate and work to the infrastructure that powers our homes and cities. Franklin's innovative spirit, which led him to explore the natural world with curiosity and practicality, has inspired generations of scientists and engineers who continue to push the boundaries of knowledge and technology. Franklin's influence extends beyond the realm of science and technology. His work as a diplomat and his role in securing French support for the American Revolution were crucial to the founding of the United States, and his diplomatic skills continue to serve as a model for modern international relations. His ability to navigate complex political landscapes, build alliances, and advocate for his country's interests remains an important example for contemporary diplomats. Franklin's approach to diplomacy, grounded in mutual respect and collaboration, is a reminder of the importance of negotiation and compromise in achieving global peace and cooperation. In the political sphere, Franklin's ideas about government, liberty, and democracy continue to be relevant today. His belief in the importance of a government that is accountable to the people, with power distributed across different branches to prevent any one group from becoming too powerful, has been reflected in the structure of modern democratic systems. The US Constitution, which Franklin helped to shape, remains a living document that serves as the foundation for the governance of the United States and provides a model for democratic systems around the world. His ideas about the importance of checks and balances, civic virtue, and the need for an informed electorate continue to inform debates about the role of government and the responsibilities of citizens. Franklin's views on the separation of church and state are also increasingly relevant in the modern era. As societies around the world grapple with issues of religious freedom and the role of religion in governance, Franklin, who advocated for religious tolerance and believed that government should not impose religious dogma on its citizens, remains a key figure in the ongoing conversation about the proper relationship between religion and politics. His belief in the right of individuals to practice their faith freely and without interference from the state has shaped the development of religious freedom as a fundamental human right in democratic societies. Furthermore, Franklin's commitment to social justice and equality, particularly in his later years as an abolitionist, continues to resonate in contemporary discussions about civil rights and social justice. His shift from a man who once accepted slavery to one of the foremost abolitionists of his time is a powerful example of personal growth and moral conviction. Franklin's efforts to end slavery and promote racial equality were groundbreaking for his time, and his legacy continues to inspire those who fight for justice and equality today. His advocacy for the abolition of slavery, along with his efforts to improve the lives of marginalized groups, underscores the importance of challenging systemic injustices and working toward a more inclusive and equitable society. Franklin's influence can also be seen in the realm of business and entrepreneurship. His life story, from humble beginnings as a printer's apprentice to becoming one of the most successful and influential figures in the world, continues to serve as an example of the American dream. Franklin's emphasis on hard work, frugality, and innovation resonates with the values of entrepreneurship and self-reliance that are central to modern capitalism. His inventive spirit and ability to turn ideas into practical solutions have inspired generations of innovators who continue to shape the business world. Finally, Franklin's belief in the importance of humility and the pursuit of moral excellence remains a timeless lesson for individuals and societies alike. His 13 virtues emphasize the need for personal accountability, the importance of moderation, and the value of self-reflection. In an age where the pursuit of material success often takes precedence over moral development, Franklin's commitment to living a virtuous life provides a valuable counterbalance, reminding us that true fulfillment comes not from wealth or status, but from living in accordance with our highest principles. Benjamin Franklin's role in the creation of the United States was not limited to his own ideas and actions. His influence extended to his fellow founding fathers, many of whom held him in high regard. Franklin's wisdom, diplomacy, and intellectual contributions left an indelible mark on the minds of the men with whom he worked, shaping their thinking on governance, liberty, and the future of the Republic. One of Franklin's closest relationships was with Thomas Jefferson, the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. Franklin and Jefferson shared a deep respect for Enlightenment principles, particularly the ideas of liberty, reason, and the natural rights of individuals. Although their political views were sometimes different, Jefferson was more inclined toward agrarianism and states' rights, while Franklin embraced a more pragmatic approach to government. They found common ground in their commitment to the ideals of the Revolution. Franklin's diplomatic experience and his ability to navigate complex political situations were invaluable to Jefferson, who often sought Franklin's advice on matters of foreign policy and governance. Franklin's influence on Jefferson can be seen in their shared belief in the importance of public education and the role of reason in government. Franklin's work in establishing educational institutions such as the University of Pennsylvania inspired Jefferson's own efforts to create a system of public education in Virginia. Both men believed that an educated citizenry was essential for the success of the new republic, and they advocated for the spread of knowledge and intellectual inquiry. Franklin's relationship with John Adams, another key figure in the American Revolution, was also one of mutual respect and admiration. Adams, known for his fiery temperament and staunch advocacy for independence, often turned to Franklin for advice on diplomacy and political strategy. Franklin's diplomatic success in securing French support for the American Revolution earned him Adams' deep admiration, and the two men developed a close working relationship during the critical years of the Revolution. Despite their differences, Franklin was more conciliatory and pragmatic, while Adams was often more idealistic and principled. The two men shared a common vision for the future of the United States. Franklin's role as a diplomat was central to his influence on both Jefferson and Adams. As the American representative to France during the Revolution, Franklin played a key role in securing crucial French military and financial support. His ability to communicate the ideals of the American cause to the French, while also negotiating effectively with French officials, helped to ensure that the revolution succeeded. Both Jefferson and Adams recognized the importance of Franklin's diplomatic work, and they often consulted him on foreign policy matters during the early years of the Republic. Franklin's influence extended beyond these two prominent figures. James Madison, often referred to as the father of the Constitution, was deeply influenced by Franklin's ideas on government. Madison, who played a central role in the drafting of the U.S. Constitution, was familiar with Franklin's belief in the separation of powers and checks and balances. Franklin's emphasis on a balanced government with power distributed among different branches became a central tenet of the Constitution. Madison's ideas on the structure of government were shaped in part by Franklin's vision of a republic that would protect individual rights while promoting the common good. George Washington, the first President of the United States, also held Franklin in high regard. Washington admired Franklin's diplomacy and his ability to bridge divides between people of different backgrounds and political views. Franklin's role in securing French support during the Revolution was particularly important to Washington, who recognized that without France's assistance, the war would have been much more difficult, if not impossible, to win. Washington also shared Franklin's commitment to Republican principles, believing that the new nation must be built on the foundations of liberty, virtue, and public service. Franklin's influence on the Founding Fathers was not just intellectual, it was also personal. His ability to mediate conflicts, build consensus, and bring people together made him an invaluable figure in the early years of the United States. His diplomatic skills, his reputation as a man of reason, and his ability to balance idealism with practicality made him a trusted advisor and mentor to many of his fellow leaders. Franklin was able to bring people from different backgrounds and political perspectives together, helping to forge the unity that was necessary for the survival of the young republic. While Franklin's relationship with his fellow Founding Fathers was one of mutual respect, he did not always agree with them on every issue. For example, Franklin's approach to government was often more pragmatic and flexible than that of some of his peers, who held more rigid ideological views. Franklin believed in the importance of compromise and the need to adapt to changing circumstances, while figures like Jefferson and Madison sometimes held more ideologically driven positions. However, despite these differences, Franklin's ability to find common ground and his commitment to the success of the Republic ensured that his influence remained strong throughout the founding period. As the United States began to take shape, Franklin's ideas on governance and his vision for the nation continued to resonate with the Founding Fathers. His belief in the importance of a balanced government, The protection of individual rights and the need for civic virtue became foundational principles in the formation of the new republic. Even after his death, his influence continued to shape the political and intellectual climate of the United States. His legacy as a diplomat, philosopher, and statesman remains a key part of the nation's identity. Benjamin Franklin's diplomatic career was one of the most significant aspects of his legacy. His ability to navigate complex international relations, build alliances, and represent American interests abroad helped to secure the independence of the United States and shaped the country's early foreign policy. Franklin's diplomatic achievements were instrumental in establishing the United States as a respected and independent nation on the world stage. Franklin's diplomatic career began during the American Revolution, when he was appointed as a commissioner to France. At the time, the American colonies were engaged in a desperate struggle for independence against Britain, and Franklin's task was to secure French support for the American cause. The importance of this mission could not be overstated. Without the financial and military assistance of France, the American Revolution would have been much more difficult, if not impossible, to win. When Franklin arrived in France in 1776, he was already well known as a statesman, scientist, and philosopher, and his reputation made him an ideal representative for the fledgling United States. His charm, wit, and intellectual prowess made him a favourite in French intellectual circles, and he quickly became a beloved figure in Paris. Franklin's ability to connect with the French court, as well as with leading philosophers and intellectuals, helped to garner support for the American cause. One of Franklin's most significant diplomatic achievements was his successful negotiation of the Treaty of Alliance with France in 1778. This treaty recognized the United States as an independent nation and pledged French military and financial support to the American Revolution. The alliance with France proved to be a turning point in the war, providing the American forces with crucial resources, including soldiers, supplies, and naval support. The French Navy, in particular, played a decisive role in the victory at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, which effectively ended the war and led to the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, officially recognizing the United States as an independent nation. Franklin's diplomatic skills were not limited to his work in France. He was also instrumental in negotiating the Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution and secured peace with Britain. As one of the American commissioners to the peace talks, Franklin worked alongside John Adams and John Jay to craft a treaty that would establish the boundaries of the new United States and ensure its sovereignty. Franklin's diplomatic acumen, his ability to navigate delicate negotiations, and his deep understanding of both European politics and American interests were crucial to the successful conclusion of the treaty. In addition to his work in securing French support during the Revolution and negotiating the Treaty of Paris, Franklin's diplomatic efforts laid the groundwork for future American foreign policy. His experience in navigating international relations helped shape the early principles of U.S. diplomacy. Franklin believed that the United States should maintain friendly relations with European powers, but he also recognized the importance of avoiding entangling alliances that could drag the country into unnecessary conflicts. This principle of non-entanglement would become a cornerstone of U.S. foreign policy, particularly under the leadership of George Washington and later presidents. Franklin's diplomatic work also contributed to the establishment of key relationships between the United States and other nations. His time in France helped to solidify the country's alliance with one of Europe's most powerful nations, and his efforts to cultivate positive relationships with other European powers were essential to the early success of the United States on the world stage. Franklin's work helped to establish the United States as a nation that was taken seriously in international affairs, and his diplomatic legacy continues to be felt in the nation's foreign policy today. In addition to his work in Europe, Franklin's influence on U.S. diplomacy extended to the Western Hemisphere. As a delegate to the Continental Congress and a representative of the United States, Franklin played a role in shaping the country's relations with other nations in the Americas. His support for the independence of Spanish colonies in the Americas, particularly during the Revolution, reflected his belief in the spread of Republican ideals and his commitment to the cause of liberty throughout the Western Hemisphere. Franklin's diplomatic legacy was also defined by his ability to represent American interests in a way that emphasized reason, pragmatism, and mutual respect. He understood that diplomacy was not just about negotiating treaties and securing agreements. It was about building relationships, understanding the interests of other nations, and finding common ground. His diplomatic style was marked by tact, patience, and a deep respect for the dignity of others, which helped to establish the United States as a nation that was not only assertive in defending its interests, but also respected by other nations for its principles and conduct. Franklin's diplomatic efforts also laid the foundation for the development of American foreign policy after the Revolution. His approach to diplomacy, emphasizing the importance of alliances, maintaining neutrality in European conflicts, and protecting American sovereignty, was reflected in the foreign policy decisions made by subsequent administrations. Franklin's example as a diplomat who sought to balance national interests with international cooperation served as a model for future U.S. diplomats and foreign policymakers. In many ways, Franklin's contributions to American diplomacy were reflective of his broader worldview. He was a firm believer in the importance of reason, dialogue, and compromise, and he approached international relations with a commitment to peaceful resolution and mutual understanding. His diplomatic career was a testament to his belief in the potential for progress through cooperation, and his work helped to shape the trajectory of the United States as a nation that would seek to be both independent and engaged with the world around it. Benjamin Franklin was not only a statesman and diplomat, but also one of the most influential scientists of his era. His groundbreaking contributions to science, particularly in the fields of electricity, meteorology, and inventions, helped lay the foundation for modern American scientific thought and innovation. Franklin's commitment to empirical observation, practical experimentation, and the application of scientific knowledge to improve everyday life made him a key figure in the development of scientific inquiry in America. Franklin's work in electricity is perhaps his most famous scientific achievement. In the mid-18th century, electricity was a largely unexplored field of study, and Franklin's experiments revolutionized the way people understood electrical phenomena. His famous kite experiment in 1752, where he flew a kite during a thunderstorm to prove that lightning was a form of electricity, remains one of the most iconic moments in the history of science. Franklin's findings laid the groundwork for future research into electricity, and his work helped establish the field of electrical engineering. The invention of the lightning rod, which he developed as a practical application of his electrical research, was a significant contribution to public safety and remains one of his most enduring scientific legacies. Franklin's scientific method was grounded in his belief in observation, experimentation, and practical application. He was not content with abstract theories. He sought to understand the world through hands-on experimentation and to apply his discoveries in ways that could benefit society. His work in electricity was not just about theoretical inquiry, but about finding solutions to real-world problems, such as protecting buildings from lightning strikes. Franklin's approach to science was a model of the Enlightenment spirit, rooted in reason, empirical evidence, and the idea that knowledge should be used to improve the human condition. Franklin's influence on American scientific thought extended beyond his work in electricity. He was also a pioneer in the study of meteorology, particularly in his observations of the Gulf Stream and his theory that storms were linked to atmospheric electricity. In 1749, Franklin published a paper in which he explained the role of the Gulf Stream in shaping weather patterns along the eastern seaboard of North America. His observations helped to further the understanding of ocean currents and weather systems, laying the foundation for future research in meteorology and oceanography. Franklin's work in meteorology helped establish him as a leading figure in the American scientific community, and his methods of observation and experimentation became central to the development of modern scientific practices. In addition to his work in electricity and meteorology, Franklin was an inventor whose ideas shaped everyday life in the 18th century and beyond. He's credited with inventing the lightning rod, the bifocal lens, and the Franklin stove, among other innovations. Each of these inventions was a practical solution to a real-world problem. The Franklin stove, for example, was designed to improve the efficiency of heating homes and reduce the amount of fuel needed for fires. The invention of bifocal glasses, which allowed people to have one pair of glasses for both reading and distance vision, addressed a practical need in Franklin's own life and revolutionized vision correction. Franklin's work in the field of invention was deeply influenced by his belief that science should serve society. He saw science not as an abstract pursuit, but as a means of improving the quality of life for ordinary people. His inventions were designed to make life easier, more efficient, and safer. This pragmatic approach to science made Franklin a precursor to the modern scientific community, where the focus is often on applied research that has direct benefits for society. Franklin's influence on American scientific thought can also be seen in his role as a founder of the American Philosophical Society, APS, in 1743. The APS was one of the first organizations dedicated to scientific and intellectual inquiry in the American colonies. It served as a hub for the exchange of ideas and research, and Franklin's involvement helped to establish a tradition of scientific collaboration in the United States. The society became a model for later scientific institutions in America, and its emphasis on empirical research and the promotion of scientific knowledge continues to shape American scientific thought today. Franklin's contributions to science were recognized both in America and abroad. He was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society of London, one of the most prestigious scientific organizations in the world, in tuxtos septini simti pistismiti sessi. His election to the Royal Society was a testament to the respect he had earned among the leading scientific minds of Europe. Franklin's work in electricity, meteorology, and invention earned him international recognition, and his ideas were widely disseminated throughout Europe and the American colonies. His influence extended to the development of scientific thought not only in the United States but also in Europe, where his work was studied and built upon by scientists such as Michael Faraday, who made significant advances in the study of electricity. Franklin's impact on American scientific thought was not limited to his own discoveries and inventions. He also played a key role in fostering a culture of scientific inquiry in the United States. His founding of the American Philosophical Society and his involvement in scientific organizations helped to establish a tradition of intellectual collaboration and scientific exchange in the colonies. Franklin's belief in the importance of education and the free exchange of ideas laid the foundation for the development of American scientific institutions, such as the National Academy of Sciences, which continues to shape the direction of scientific research and policy today. In the years following Franklin's death, his contributions to science continued to be recognized and celebrated. His work in electricity and invention had a lasting impact on the development of modern technology, and his approach to scientific inquiry became a model for future generations of scientists. Franklin's legacy as a scientist, inventor, and philosopher remains an essential part of the intellectual heritage of the United States. His work helped to shape the nation's identity as a land of innovation and progress, and his contributions to the development of American scientific thought continue to influence the field today. Benjamin Franklin's influence on the development of the United States extended beyond his contributions to politics, science, and diplomacy. He played a crucial role in shaping the civic institutions that would become the foundation of American society. From his work in public education to his advocacy for volunteer organizations and public health initiatives, Franklin's vision for a functional, well-ordered society was one that emphasized civic responsibility, moral integrity, and the active involvement of citizens in the community. One of Franklin's most significant contributions to American civic life was his establishment of the in 1731. This was the first subscription library in the American colonies, and it played a key role in spreading knowledge and fostering a culture of intellectual exchange. Franklin's vision for the library was simple but profound. He believed that knowledge should be accessible to all, not just the elite. The Library Company became a model for the creation of public libraries across the country and laid the groundwork for Franklin's broader commitment to making education and intellectual resources available to the wider public. Franklin also understood that education was essential for the functioning of a democratic society. In 1740, he helped establish one of the first institutions of higher learning in the United States. Franklin's approach to education was practical and forward-thinking. He believed that universities should not only teach classical subjects, but also focus on practical skills that would be beneficial to the growing nation. The University of Pennsylvania, which was founded with Franklin's vision in mind, became a leading institution for modern practical education, emphasizing a well-rounded curriculum that included subjects like business, medicine, and engineering, in addition to the liberal arts. Beyond education, Franklin's commitment to civic engagement extended to his advocacy for public health. In the mid-17th century, Philadelphia, like many growing cities, faced significant health challenges, including outbreaks of smallpox and other diseases. Franklin, ever the practical thinker, sought to address these issues by promoting public health measures and improving sanitation. One of his most important contributions in this area was his support for, which he advocated for during the 1730s and 1740s. He understood that smallpox was a significant threat to public health and worked to educate the public on the benefits of inoculation, a practice that had been used in Europe but was not yet widely accepted in America. Franklin's advocacy helped save countless lives and played a role in shaping the development of public health practices in the United States. In addition to his work in education and public health, Franklin was a strong advocate for that would benefit the community. He was instrumental in founding in 1736 the first volunteer fire department in Philadelphia. Franklin's concern for public safety and his belief in community responsibility led him to organize the fire company, which became a model for other cities in the colonies. The idea of organizing volunteer groups to address social needs was one that Franklin carried with him throughout his life, and it became a cornerstone of his vision for an engaged, self-reliant society. Franklin's commitment to public service was also reflected in his work to improve the infrastructure of Philadelphia. In 1752, he helped to establish the city's first, which made the streets safer at night and helped to reduce crime. Franklin also advocated for the creation of public parks and green spaces, recognizing the importance of providing citizens with access to places for recreation and relaxation. His work in improving the infrastructure of Philadelphia made the city a model of urban planning, and his ideas about public spaces and civic amenities would later influence the development of American cities. Another significant aspect of Franklin's civic engagement was his role as a deputy postmaster in Pennsylvania. Franklin worked to improve the efficiency and reliability of the colonial postal system, which was essential for communication between the colonies and with Europe. His efforts to standardize postal routes and reduce the cost of mail delivery helped to foster better communication and closer ties between the American colonies. Franklin's work in establishing a reliable postal system was vital to the functioning of the new republic, and it reflected his belief in the importance of efficient government services in a functioning democracy. Throughout his life, Franklin was an advocate for the belief that individuals had a responsibility to contribute to the welfare of the community and the nation. His ideas about civic virtue were closely tied to his moral philosophy, which emphasized self-discipline, hard work, and a commitment to the common good. Franklin's focus on civic virtue is reflected in his 13 virtues, which served as a guide to living a life of integrity and responsibility. He believed that individuals should not only strive to improve themselves, but should also work to improve society as a whole. This emphasis on civic duty was central to his vision of the United States as a nation of virtuous, engaged citizens. Franklin's work in establishing civic institutions, promoting education, and advocating for public health and safety laid the foundation for a vibrant, self-reliant society. His belief in the importance of civic responsibility and the active involvement of citizens in the public good became central to the identity of the United States. Franklin's legacy as a founder of American civic institutions continues to be felt today, as his vision of an educated, engaged, and self-reliant citizenry remains a guiding principle in American life. In many ways, Franklin's contributions to American society were a model for the kind of nation he hoped the United States would become. His commitment to public service, his advocacy for education, and his belief in the importance of civic responsibility laid the groundwork for the development of the United States as a democratic republic. Franklin's influence on the development of American civic institutions is one of the most enduring aspects of his legacy, and his ideas about the role of citizens in a democracy continue to shape the American experience. Benjamin Franklin's contributions to science, politics, and philosophy were not confined to the United States. His influence reached far beyond the borders of the young nation, and his ideas played a significant role in shaping global intellectual movements, particularly the European Enlightenment. Franklin's ability to blend scientific inquiry, political theory, and moral philosophy made him a central figure in the intellectual world of the 18th century, and his legacy continues to shape global thought even today. One of Franklin's most important contributions to global intellectual movements was his role in the between Europe and the American colonies. As a respected scientist, philosopher, and diplomat, Franklin was a key figure in the intellectual networks that spanned the Atlantic. His work in science and philosophy resonated with European thinkers, particularly those associated with the Enlightenment, which emphasized reason, individual liberty, and the pursuit of knowledge, was a movement that shaped much of Europe's intellectual landscape during the 18th century. Franklin's writings, inventions, and scientific discoveries were instrumental in advancing Enlightenment ideals on both sides of the Atlantic. Franklin's reputation as a scientist was particularly significant in Europe, where he became a prominent member of one of the oldest and most prestigious scientific organizations in the world. His work on electricity, particularly his experiments with lightning and his invention of the lightning rod, earned him international recognition. His findings in electricity were pivotal to the development of modern physics and influenced later scientists such as And, who built on Franklin's ideas in their own work. Franklin's scientific contributions were widely disseminated across Europe, and his work was seen as a major breakthrough in understanding the natural world. Franklin's influence was not limited to science. His political ideas also resonated with intellectuals across Europe, particularly those advocating for the principles of And. Franklin's role in securing French support during the American Revolution and his involvement in the drafting of the U.S. Constitution were highly regarded in Europe, where many saw the American Revolution as a model for overthrowing oppressive monarchies. Franklin's ideas about government, liberty, and the importance of an educated and virtuous citizenry were influential in the development of democratic movements in Europe. In France, Franklin became a celebrated figure, admired not only for his political and scientific achievements, but also for his personal qualities. His charm, wit, and intellectual curiosity endeared him to the French intellectual elite. Franklin developed close relationships with key figures of the French Enlightenment, including and. These thinkers were at the forefront of the movement to challenge traditional authority and promote reason, liberty, and equality. Franklin's interactions with them helped to strengthen the intellectual ties between America and France, and played a key role in the development of revolutionary ideas in both countries. Franklin's influence on these is particularly noteworthy. Though Franklin did not live to see the revolution, his ideas about liberty, democracy, and the rights of individuals were integral to the intellectual currents that led to the revolution. His writings, particularly his advocacy for the separation of church and state, and his belief in the importance of moral and civic virtue, were widely read and discussed by French revolutionaries. Franklin's example of a successful republic, built on the principles of liberty and equality, inspired many in France who were seeking to break free from the constraints of monarchy and aristocracy. Beyond his work in Europe, Franklin's influence also extended to, as an advocate for the independence of the American colonies, Franklin's ideas about liberty and self-determination resonated with leaders of independence movements across the Western Hemisphere. His correspondence with Latin American intellectuals and political leaders helped to foster a sense of solidarity between the American colonies and the emerging republics of Latin America. Franklin's vision of an independent democratic republic was seen as a model for those seeking to establish their own nations free from colonial rule. Franklin's ideas also played a role in the development of, in the 18th century, scientific knowledge was still largely confined to individual countries or regions. But Franklin's work helped to bridge these divides. His involvement with the Royal Society and other scientific organizations helped to foster international collaboration in the pursuit of knowledge. Franklin's emphasis on the practical application of science, particularly in the development of technologies such as the lightning rod and the Franklin stove, helped to promote the idea that science should serve the greater good of humanity. His work laid the groundwork for the development of modern scientific institutions and networks that continue to facilitate global collaboration in fields such as medicine, physics, and engineering. Franklin's influence on global intellectual movements also extended to the realm of his 13 virtues, a list of personal qualities that he believed were essential for a virtuous life, have been studied and admired by thinkers around the world. Franklin's emphasis on self-discipline, frugality, humility, and civic virtue resonated with philosophers and social reformers who sought to improve the moral fabric of society. His writings on the importance of moral character and the role of virtue in public life continue to be relevant in contemporary discussions about ethics, social responsibility, and the role of individuals in society. Finally, Franklin's legacy in global intellectual movements can be seen in that continue to shape political thought today. His belief in the importance of liberty, equality, and self-government has influenced democratic movements around the world. Franklin's life and work serve as a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge, the promotion of reason, and the fight for freedom and equality are universal goals that transcend national borders. His influence on global intellectual movements continues to inspire individuals and nations striving for democracy, justice, and human rights. Benjamin Franklin was not only a scientist, diplomat, and inventor, but also a keen philosopher whose ideas about society, human nature, and progress continue to shape modern thinking. His philosophical legacy is grounded in the belief that individuals and societies can continually improve through reason, self-discipline, and the pursuit of knowledge. Franklin's writings, particularly his autobiography and his 13 virtues, reveal his views on human nature, morality, and the importance of intellectual and moral development in both personal and collective life. Franklin's approach to philosophy was deeply practical. He was less concerned with abstract speculation than with how philosophical ideas could be applied to real-world problems. His work in science, politics, and public service was informed by his philosophical belief in progress, the idea that humanity could improve through the application of reason, discipline, and civic engagement. Franklin believed that the pursuit of knowledge and moral self-improvement were the keys to personal fulfillment and societal well-being. Central to Franklin's philosophy was his belief in. He viewed life as an ongoing process of growth and development, where individuals had the power and the responsibility to shape their own character. This belief is most clearly reflected in his 13 virtues, a list of personal principles that he created as a guide for living a virtuous life. The virtues emphasize the importance of qualities such as temperance, order, sincerity, and humility. Franklin's method of moral self-improvement was systematic. Each week he focused on one virtue, tracking his progress and seeking to cultivate it in his daily life. This practical approach to philosophy reflected his belief that anyone could improve their character through conscious effort and discipline. Franklin's views on were also shaped by his commitment to reason and rationality. He was a product of a period that emphasized the power of reason to overcome ignorance, superstition, and tyranny. Franklin's belief in human progress was grounded in the idea that people were capable of using reason to make better decisions, improve their lives, and create a more just society. However, Franklin was also a realist. While he believed in the potential for progress, he recognized that human nature was not perfect, and that individuals were often driven by selfish desires, passions, and impulses. For Franklin, the challenge was to master these natural tendencies through discipline and virtue, creating a balance between personal desires and the common good. Franklin's also extended to his views on. He believed that society should be organized in a way that promoted the well-being of all its members, while also allowing individuals the freedom to pursue their own interests. He was a strong advocate for the belief that government should be based on the consent of the governed, and that power should be distributed to prevent any one group from becoming too powerful. Franklin's belief in a balanced government, with checks and balances to limit the abuse of power, became a foundational principle in the formation of the US Constitution. He understood that the survival of a republic depended on the active participation of an educated and virtuous citizenry, a theme that he frequently addressed in his writings. Franklin's views on were grounded in the belief that both individuals and societies could continually evolve toward greater levels of understanding, fairness, and prosperity. He saw the pursuit of knowledge as essential to both personal development and social improvement. This belief in progress was reflected in his support for his involvement in founding educational institutions like the University of Pennsylvania, and his establishment of the Library Company of Philadelphia. Franklin understood that knowledge was not only a means of personal enrichment, but also a tool for improving society as a whole. His commitment to education and the spread of knowledge laid the groundwork for the development of a more informed, engaged, and active citizenry. In addition to his belief in intellectual progress, Franklin also emphasized the importance of. His 13 virtues were a reflection of his belief that individuals could and should strive to cultivate good character. Franklin was keenly aware of the moral failings of human nature, but he believed that through self-discipline, rationality, and a commitment to virtue, people could overcome these shortcomings and live better lives. For Franklin, the cultivation of virtue was not a lofty ideal, but a practical necessity for living a fulfilled and meaningful life. He believed that by adhering to a set of moral principles, individuals could contribute to the greater good of society and help create a more just and virtuous world. Franklin's about human potential and progress was also informed by his belief in the importance of. He understood that for a republic to thrive, its citizens had to be actively engaged in public life and committed to the common good. Franklin's involvement in civic projects such as the establishment of fire departments, hospitals, and educational institutions reflected his belief that society should be organized to meet the needs of all its members. He also believed that government should serve the people, and that citizens had a responsibility to participate in the political process, whether through voting, public service, or civic organizations. Franklin's commitment to the idea that individuals could pursue their own happiness while also contributing to the welfare of society was central to his philosophy. He believed that true happiness could only be achieved by living a life of integrity, purpose, and responsibility. His philosophy of self-improvement, intellectual curiosity, and civic engagement formed the bedrock of his worldview and became a guiding principle for the new nation he helped to create. In many ways, Franklin's mirrors the ideals of modern American society. The belief that individuals have the capacity to shape their own futures through hard work, discipline, and moral character. His ideas about self-improvement, knowledge, and civic virtue remain deeply relevant today, as they continue to inform contemporary discussions about personal responsibility, democracy, and the role of citizens in society. Franklin's legacy as a philosopher and thinker is enduring, and his ideas continue to resonate with those who seek to build a better, more just world. Benjamin Franklin's life and work were built upon core values that continue to resonate deeply with the ideals of modern America. His contributions to the fields of science, politics, public service, and education were driven by a belief in liberty, self-reliance, and civic responsibility, values that remain central to the American identity today. As one of the nation's founding figures, Franklin's legacy can be seen in the ongoing pursuit of freedom, personal development, and a more just society. At the heart of Franklin's work, both as a revolutionary leader and as a public servant, was his unwavering commitment to. He was not only a key figure in the American Revolution, helping to secure French support for the colonies, but also a champion of the idea that freedom from oppression was the fundamental right of all people. Franklin's efforts to secure independence for the United States were rooted in his belief that individuals had the right to govern themselves, free from the tyranny of monarchy or despotism. His work as a diplomat and his involvement in the drafting of the U.S. Constitution were reflections of this deep commitment to liberty and self-governance. Franklin's ideas about liberty were not just political, they were also deeply moral. He believed that liberty could only be fully realized in a society that promoted. For Franklin, true freedom was inseparable from moral and civic virtue. His 13 virtues were not merely personal guidelines. They were linked to the broader idea that a free society requires individuals who take responsibility for their actions and work toward the common good. This notion of freedom tied to civic virtue is a cornerstone of modern American values and continues to shape discussions on personal rights and social obligations. One of Franklin's most enduring contributions to American values was his emphasis on. He believed that individuals had the capacity and the responsibility to improve their own lives through hard work, education, and moral discipline. Franklin's rise from humble beginnings as an apprentice in his father's printing business to one of the most respected figures in the world serves as a powerful testament to the American ethos of. His personal philosophy, centered on the cultivation of virtue and the pursuit of knowledge, has influenced generations of Americans who view self-reliance as a vital part of achieving personal and societal success. Franklin's belief in self-reliance extended beyond just individual achievement. It was also connected to his vision for In Franklin's view, the strength of the Republic depended on the active participation of individuals in their communities and in civic life. He championed the establishment of public institutions such as libraries, schools, and volunteer organizations, believing that the common good was best served when people took initiative and worked together for mutual benefit. This idea of a society where individuals are empowered to act and contribute to the greater good remains foundational to the American model of civic engagement. Franklin's contributions to civic life reflect his belief in the... Throughout his life, Franklin was deeply involved in public service, from his work on the Pennsylvania Assembly to his role in establishing fire companies, hospitals, and educational institutions. His service as a diplomat, both in France and in the negotiations for the Treaty of Paris, also reflected his commitment to the well-being of his fellow citizens and to the larger cause of freedom and justice. Franklin's legacy as an advocate for public welfare is a key component of modern American values. His emphasis on the importance of civic virtue, moral responsibility, and the active involvement of citizens in governance continues to influence contemporary discussions about democracy. The idea that individuals have a duty to participate in public life, whether through voting, volunteering, or serving in public office, is central to the health and success of a democratic society. Franklin's focus on civic duty also extended to his belief in the need for an. He saw education as the foundation for both personal development and the functioning of a democracy. His support for public libraries, his founding of the University of Pennsylvania, and his role in shaping the American education system were driven by his belief that an educated populace was essential for the success of the Republic. Franklin's dedication to education and intellectual exchange laid the groundwork for the development of the American public school system and the broader cultural belief in the transformative power of knowledge. Franklin's vision of progress was not just about political independence or personal success. It was about he saw science, technology, and moral development as essential to the advancement of human civilization. Franklin's own work in science and invention, particularly his experiments with electricity, his inventions of the lightning rod and bifocals, and his improvements to the stove, reflected his belief that human progress could be achieved through innovation and practical application of knowledge. Franklin's belief in progress has remained a guiding principle for the United States, where innovation and technological advancement continue to be celebrated as cornerstones of national success. His emphasis on science that was applied to solve real-world problems was revolutionary in his time and has continued to shape American values, especially in the fields of engineering, technology, and business. Franklin's influence can be seen in modern America's culture of innovation, where new ideas are constantly tested and refined to improve society. Moreover, Franklin's forward-thinking belief that could solve society's problems aligns closely with modern American values. His commitment to an ever-progressing society, one that values intellectual and moral growth, continues to inspire movements in public policy, social justice, and education that strive for a better and more equitable future. While Benjamin Franklin is often celebrated for his public accomplishments, his role in securing American independence, his scientific discoveries, and his philosophical contributions, it is equally important to consider his personal life and character. Franklin was a complex individual whose experiences, relationships, and personal growth were central to the shaping of his ideas and legacy. His personal life offers valuable insights into the man behind the achievements, revealing a figure who was not only a great statesman and thinker, but also a deeply reflective and, at times, conflicted human being. Franklin's family life was, in many ways, as complicated as his public career. Born in 1706 as the 15th of 17 children, Franklin grew up in a large, modest household in Boston. His father, Josiah Franklin, was a candle maker who instilled in Benjamin the value of hard work and self-discipline. Franklin's early life was marked by a sense of responsibility and frugality, qualities that would define much of his character. However, his family relationships were not always harmonious. In particular, Franklin had a strained relationship with his father, who, despite being a pious and hard-working man, did not share Franklin's intellectual curiosity or ambition. This difference in values led Franklin to leave home at a young age, setting him on the path of independence that would characterize his life. Franklin's relationship with his wife, Deborah Reed, was similarly complicated. Deborah and Franklin married in 1730, and together they had 2 children, Francis and Sarah. However, Franklin's long absences, especially during his years in Europe as a diplomat, put a strain on their marriage. Franklin and Deborah were separated for many years, and Franklin's letters to her reveal a man who deeply cared for her, but was often preoccupied with his public duties. Their relationship was marked by Franklin's extended periods of absence, and his focus on his work, which at times led to personal distance. Despite these challenges, Deborah's support for Franklin's work was steadfast, and she managed much of his affairs in his absence. Franklin's relationship with his son, William Franklin, was another source of personal conflict. William, who was born in 1730, was a loyalist during the American Revolution and opposed Franklin's support for independence. This political divide caused a deep rift between father and son, with Franklin eventually disowning him. The tension between Franklin and William is a poignant reminder of the personal sacrifices and struggles Franklin faced during the Revolution. It also highlights the complex and sometimes painful nature of family loyalty during a time of political upheaval. Franklin's character was shaped by his personal experiences, his commitment to self-improvement, and his belief in the importance of moral virtue. As outlined in his 13 Virtues, Franklin's personal philosophy emphasized qualities such as temperance, resolution, frugality, and sincerity. These virtues were not just abstract ideals, they were principles that Franklin sought to live by every day. His dedication to self-discipline and moral development was evident in his meticulous tracking of his progress as he strove to cultivate each virtue in his life. Franklin's 13 Virtues reflected his belief that individuals had the power to shape their own character and lives through conscious effort. His method for self-improvement was pragmatic, reflecting his rational, Enlightenment-influenced worldview. Franklin's idea of self-discipline was not about repression, but about actively seeking personal growth and moral excellence. He believed that by focusing on these virtues, individuals could contribute to the greater good of society and live fulfilling, meaningful lives. In addition to his focus on personal virtue, Franklin had a deep belief in the importance of and. Franklin's own writings reveal a man who was constantly examining his thoughts and actions, striving to learn from both his successes and mistakes. In many ways, his self-reflection was an essential part of his personal and intellectual growth. While Franklin was known for his wit and confidence, he also recognized the limits of his knowledge and was always open to new ideas and insights. This intellectual humility allowed him to evolve throughout his life, embracing new perspectives and continuously striving to improve both personally and professionally. Despite his many achievements, Franklin was not immune to personal contradictions and challenges. For much of his early life, he was deeply involved in the institution of slavery, both personally and professionally. Franklin owned enslaved people and was involved in the slave trade, which stood in stark contrast to his later advocacy for abolition. His shift from a man who accepted slavery to one of the leading abolitionists of his time is a reflection of Franklin's evolving views on liberty, equality, and justice. This transformation speaks to Franklin's capacity for change and self-examination, qualities that allowed him to grow throughout his life. Franklin's later advocacy for thee was a significant aspect of his moral evolution. As president of the Pennsylvania Society for Promoting the Abolition of Slavery, Franklin worked to advance the cause of gradual emancipation in Pennsylvania and beyond. His role in the abolition movement was a powerful example of his belief in the potential for personal and societal progress, even in the face of deeply entrenched systems of oppression. While Franklin's earlier involvement with slavery may complicate his legacy, His eventual stance against it highlights his moral growth and his commitment to the principles of liberty and justice. In his final years, Franklin also wrestled with questions of mortality, legacy, and the future of the nation he helped to create. As he faced the end of his life, Franklin's reflections on his contributions to American society and his personal shortcomings were central to his character. He understood the fragility of human life, and his final writings reveal a man who is at peace with the idea of death, but still deeply committed to the future of the United States and the principles of liberty, equality, and democracy. Franklin's life, like those of many historical figures, was a blend of contradictions. He was a man of great intellect and wisdom, yet he was also flawed and human, wrestling with his personal relationships, his evolving moral views, and the complexities of the world around him. His legacy is not defined solely by his public achievements, but also by his ability to reflect on his own life and adapt to the changing circumstances of his time. Franklin's personal life, with its challenges and contradictions, adds depth to his character and reinforces the notion that true greatness lies not only in external accomplishments, but in the capacity for self-reflection, growth, and moral integrity.